Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Wire2Wire Sports Podcast. It is a happy Wednesday. I am your handsome host, Gene Walzak, the NFL genius. And in the upper left corner, I got Kent State's own, Cleveland's own, College Cottrell.
Hey, what's going on, Gene? I'm pretty happy about this, this show today. We got a lot to go over, and a lot of it is good news for the things that I root for. So happy to do the show today.
Bro, you should be happy to do a show every week.
That's true.
Hear that. Don't tell me you're not happy to do it every week.
But, if I got bad rooting interest, my team loses, I got to come on here, be sad and mope around. I just, it doesn't feel the same as it does this week.
Well, I know what you're talking about this week. I don't know if it's a good win, right? It's a good win. I don't feel like that you guys are any more of a national championship contender now than you are before the game.
I wasn't even just talking about that. Obviously,
I know what you're talking about.
That's one step over the hurdle. But, first topic of the day, finally good to see my guy be a championship contender. So,
you're talking about Damian Lillard?
Hey, that's my guy.
Well, in the upper right corner, let me introduce Scholastic Shally, Uncle Shally, Mr. Bill Shallcross.
What's going on? I'm just here to listen to you guys inevitably argue about Dame Lillard and Chris Paul in about 2 minutes, so I'm excited.
Well, you're going to argue about it. I'm not going to talk about Chris Paul. Who's Chris Paul? Chris Paul's involved in this conversation?
He always, whenever Dame Lillard gets talked about on the show, Chris Paul's
name comes up. That's because Cottrell has a very unrelated vibe. No, the truth is this, right? Cottrell hates Chris Paul and loves Dame Lillard, and they have very similar resumes.
No. See, that's the part. That's the part where
Cottrell doesn't hate CP3. I don't
exactly.
I've never gotten that.
You said the key phrase though. They have similar resumes, and you view them, and other people view them in very different regards. That's my gripe.
There's similar resumes. Chris Paul's is just better.
I have no issue with you saying that.
Okay, that's fine. Then let's talk about the trade.
Let's
talk about the trade. Heard around the world. Dame Lillard told everyone, if you trade me anywhere else besides Miami, I'm going to still hold out. I'm not showing up. And then 15 minutes ago, my man tweeted, excited for the new chapter of my life and with the Milwaukee Bucks. So, Jimmy Butler got online, sour grapes, talking about the NBA needs to investigate the Milwaukee Bucks for tampering, blah, 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 blah. Like Jimmy Butler wasn't tampering with Damian Lillard to begin with. So I don't want to hear all that. I felt like this was in motion by the All-Star game when my man Giannis took Dame over Drew Holiday when he had picks. Do y'all remember that? I remember that. Drew Holiday and Dame were on the same stage in the All-Star game. Giannis had the pick, and he said, give me Dame. Thought that was interesting. Now, Damian Lillard is now traded to the Milwaukee Bucks. The Phoenix Suns dump DeAndre Ayton's bum ass up into Portland. He's a bum. Don't lie. He's a bum. We got a lot to get into and unpack with this trade. Question for you. Do you think there was a clear loser in this trade? 3-team trade.
Clear loser?
Clear loser. Like in your head, you're like, they lost the trade. I want to hear what your thoughts are, Cottrell, and then Bill, and then I'll give you a clear loser. There's a clear loser in this trade, in my opinion.
For me, I don't know if the team is a clear loser. I think each team got better in that deal. I think for Milwaukee, obviously they had to change something up from last year. They lost to the Miami Heat, and I get it. Giannis wasn't 100% healthy in that one, but the other side of it is that Giannis had said before, a couple weeks ago at this point, that he wanted to make sure Milwaukee was all focused on winning before he signed his extension. I think you make this move, that's going to make your superstar happy. And I think Giannis believes that this was a winning move. And I think this is going to be something that he ultimately makes him want to re-sign in Milwaukee. So I think the Bucks were winners. I think the Suns were also winners. They cleared off DeAndre Ayton, who clearly hates, playing basketball when he's not getting the ball. They get role players and get a lot deeper on their side. And then the Blazers, I thought they actually got a good haul back, especially considering the fact that Drew Holiday, they're probably going to get more for shipping off Drew Holiday as well. So I don't have a clear loser. I think all three teams won.
Okay. Well, listen, we're in this world right now where everyone's a winner and no one's a loser. And I don't agree with that. Shally, can you bring us back some sense? Let us know who lost the trade. There's a loser in the trade.
I kind of tend to agree with Cottrell. I think everybody kind of.
Come on, I'm leaving. I'm getting out of here.
I would say overall, I think other than the Suns getting rid of Ayton's contract, I don't think they won the trade. I don't think that team's any better than they are, or sitting here before this morning. I think the Bucks got a dominant, when he's healthy, number 2 scorer to go with Giannis. They think that makes them better. And I think with what Portland can do with those picks, plus what they have with that, that really young core now, if they can keep them together and learn how to play together and keep them all on the court, I don't think Portland, I think Portland came out looking good in this. They weren't going to get that kind of deal from Miami. Miami wasn't coming off certain things. They held strong. They didn't want certain players from Miami, that weren't going to fit their future. And they waited everybody out and got a good deal. I'm sure Giannis is ecstatic. If there's one clear loser, I think it's probably Drew Holiday. I feel like he got shafted for being loyal here. Apparently he's going to get traded, so I hope Portland does right by him and he goes somewhere where he wants to be and somewhere that's a contender, because I feel like he probably got caught out in left field. This probably came out of nowhere for him. So I hope they do right by Drew Holiday if they can. That's the only thing I would say is a definite loser right now. And then and time will tell how Dame works with Chris Middleton and Giannis on the floor. So it'll be interesting in Milwaukee.
There's a clear loser in trade, in my opinion. Clear loser.
I know who you're going to say.
Who am I going to say?
You're going to say the Milwaukee Bucks.
That is correct. I think the Milwaukee Bucks are the clear loser in this trade. And I'll explain why. I think, and just as an opinion, for a championship run, I think Drew Holiday is a better player than Damian Lillard. So what teams make the NBA Finals? The teams that can play offense and defense. Giannis is a great defender. Nobody else on that Bucks team can defend. Chris Middleton's a statue. Brook Lopez can defend, and he won a Defensive Player of the Year award. Good for Brook. He got a bunch of rebounds and did a little rim defending. But as far as perimeter defense, Drew Holiday was that guy. Drew Holiday, you ask any player in the league, especially guard, what player is a dog? What player do they not want to see on the other side? What's the most underrated player in the NBA? And all of them tell you Drew Holiday is. Drew Holiday is a defensive specialist, a guy that can run an offense. He's unselfish. I just want to know how Dame is going to feel when Giannis gets in that Giannis mode, where there's 5 minutes left in the game. He's bringing the ball up the court. Everybody can get away from him. He's driving every friggin' play. Is Giannis going to keep doing that with Dame Lillard? I don't know. I know this. Giannis needs the ball in his hands to create. He is not a type of superstar that plays well off a point guard. He's not a slasher. He needs to get the ball, drive to the lane. That's not going to sit well with Dame. And now that you look at it, when you traded Grayson Allen and you traded Drew Holiday, you have no perimeter defense. None. Zero. And in the NBA, we always see this. Superstars team up, and they just forget about defense. But yet every year, teams that have very good defenses make it far. Look at the Lakers. The Lakers were nowhere near the most talented team in the NBA this year. They made it to the Western Conference Finals off of defense. The Boston Celtics, they are a defensive juggernaut. The Miami Heat, they're not loaded with superstars. Defensive juggernaut. I will give you an example of where it worked out for the offense. Denver Nuggets. They weren't really a great defensive team. They had Aaron Gordon and some, right? There was no real perimeter defender. Jamal Murray's not a great perimeter defender. It worked out this year. So maybe the copycat league gets into Dame Lillard and we can make it work with Dame Lillard and Chris. Dame Lillard and Chris Middleton are friggin' statues defensively. They might be two of the bottom 25 defenders in basketball. And I'm not kidding when I say they're 100% two of the top bottom 25 defenders when it comes to perimeter defense. Just an opinion. I think the Milwaukee Bucks and the Suns are winning the offseason with superstar players, but when push comes to shove, in a 7-game series, I would like Memphis over Milwaukee. And I mean that because the grit and the defense that is on that team, Jaren Jackson can stick, Giannis, and you have Marcus Smart on the outside who can play defense. I look at the trade and I say Portland got a lot better. Portland, they're not going to keep Drew. That's fine. You're going to get stuff for Drew. But let's just say you had Drew. You got Drew, Scoot. You have DeAndre Ayton in a new area, which you can feed him the ball with no superstar. Simons, that team's looking great. The future looks good. As far as the Suns, what did they lack? Depth. They had the goddamn scarecrow in the middle of the lane. The guy was scared to play basketball. DeAndre Ayton. The guy was terrible. And what did you pick up? You picked up a big defensive guy that always gives Jokic problems in Nurkic. And then you got depth. You got three bench pieces that you can bring in. When you look at the Milwaukee Bucks, I really think they got worse. I think without Drew Holiday and without Grayson Allen, the Milwaukee Bucks are a worse team now than they were before they made the deal. And then they added a bunch of picks, which I don't care about the picks. 26, 28, 24. It doesn't matter. I think Portland's banking on Milwaukee. Giannis might not re-sign there. If they're a tailspin this year and Giannis leaves, they could be a terrible team. Those picks could be all lottery picks.
I just don't see how they would be a tailspin this year. I still believe that Giannis is the best player in the NBA. That's something that I've stood on for the past couple of years at this point. And you bring in Damian Lillard, and I get it. Defensively, he's not Drew Holiday, but Brett brought up a great point here. Drew Holiday's offense was a big reason why the Bucks offense looked a lot worse than what it actually was, and ultimately why Mike Budenholzer isn't their coach anymore. So I do think with Dame being there, yes, you do have that drop off defensively. But Gene, I think your point that you made, it stands true. You bring up the Lakers, you bring up the Heat, you bring up the Celtics, and all those things are correct. They got there with defense, but the one exception was the team that won the championship last year. And I would argue that, that pick and roll that you had with Jamal Murray and Jokic, like you're going to see Giannis in a whole different aspect now. Obviously, he could run the pick and roll with Drew Holiday, but it's much different running it with Dame, a guy that can pull up from 30 or that can get you the ball, right there in the lane. And I think this takes a lot of pressure off of Giannis because in a sense, Giannis had some injury issues last season. So if you can, if you have to go a game or two without Giannis, I think, obviously it's going to be a detriment to that Bucks team, but you're not going to necessarily struggle scoring. Like Dame can carry the load one night if Giannis isn't going to be out there. With that Bucks team previously, if Giannis wasn't out there, it was like, who are we looking to score? We gotta rely on Chris Middleton to drop 30, or we got to rely on Drew to drop 25. So I think, time obviously will tell. I think Milwaukee does still have to make another move because, again, I do agree with you. They do need, someone that they can throw in defensively that just throws some players off their game. But I don't think it's the end of the world if they don't get that guy, because at the end of the day, you're still throwing out there a player who I think is the best player in the world. And then the guy that's going to be your number 2, I think, is the second best point guard. If you're not counting Luka as a point guard, if you count Luka there, then I say he's number 3. But, just that dynamic duo there, I think that puts you, right there in the thick of it.
I guess we can see too. They do have Bobby Portis. They do have Jay Crowder. They're known as defensive stalwarts. They really weren't in rotation last year. I get it. Yes, we will talk about baseball, Jeff. It's near the end. If you'd like to shop in, but Shally, what are your thoughts? on what we're discussing. And Control, by the way, spot on points. They're very good points. I agree with you. In the regular season, it makes them a better team. I just don't know if that gets them any closer to a championship, in my opinion, when I look at the Milwaukee Bucks, because playoff basketball is different. On any given night, if Giannis misses games, I would much rather have Dame Lillard and Drew Holiday. Much rather. My argument stems from what we're going to see in the postseason and what Drew meant to that team during that championship run. But Shally, I'd love to hear your 2 cents.
No, I mean, the one thing I was going to bring up is kind of along the same along the lines of what Brett brought up. I think as long as Dame just stays like in the positive column for what he's scoring over what he's giving up, then I think they're fine. I mean, I think they're a better team than they were last year. Drew is definitely a dog defensively, but it came up in the comments as well. He did not have a good playoffs last year. He was struggling to score 10 points. And if you're playing the pick and roll, if that's the way they're going to go with Dame and Giannis, you have to stay honest on Dame, because if not, he'll sit there and bury jump shots. You didn't have to worry about that with Drew all the time. If he was having an off night or they didn't think you had a good defender that he really couldn't drive past. He was somebody that was kind of easy to shut down. He was going to cause you problems on the other end, but he wasn't an offensive threat for you to go down and give you 25 every night in the playoffs.
He's definitely not the second option offensively. I agree. Chris Middleton.
I agree. It was Chris, but I mean, to the point last year, Giannis was banged up in the playoffs. Chris Middleton was hurt almost the entire year last year.
You're right.
People forget that too. So that mean you got to see what it's going to be. I mean, it's. I think if you're a Bucks fan, you have to be excited.
Of course.
I think if you're a Drew Holiday fan, you're probably sad to see him go, because he is that type of guy, like you said, that every team in the NBA would die to have. Everybody would love to have him be a complementary piece, be a lockdown defender on the perimeter, and play with like 2 or 3 other superstars. It just wasn't realistic to keep him with bringing Dame in. So I think Milwaukee, I think it's a move they had to make. I think, you got to keep track, you got to keep tabs with Boston, keep up with Boston. And yeah, I tend to agree with you usually with defense, wins out over offense. Obviously, all the good defensive teams made runs last year, but the best offensive team won the title. And that's your ultimate goal. So if that's what it's going to be, then that's what it's going to be. I think if you're Milwaukee, I think when Giannis came out and said what he said, I think you had to know the status quo wasn't going to be acceptable anymore. You had to go make.
I will say this though, Shally, they need to get him an extension before the season starts.
I don't think you get it before the season starts at this point. I think if they have a very good year this year, I'll absolutely try. I'll shove him a blank check and the piece of paper and hope he signs it. I just don't think he's going to. But that being said, you made the splash move to show to him that you're committed to doing what it takes to win, to keep him there. And that was a big first step for them that I think a lot of people were worried about. And they went out and did it. And I'll say this too. And I when you guys get in this silly argument all the time, I've kind of always sided, leaned a little bit at least to the side of Dame Lillard. He doesn't have any excuses anymore. Like this move, we've kind of said it with CP3, like, how many good teams is he going to play with and not get it done, whatever. But Dame's on a good team now. He's playing with another superstar. He can't go there and be hurt or play 50 games or do, go out in the first round or anything. Because if that's the case, then he needs to start eating the criticism. Like he's out of Portland. He got out. He did what he wanted to do. I think he's in a better spot now than he would have been if he went to Miami. But, it's time to put up or shut up now for him.
Well, that's a perfect question to bring up right now. Because what I wanted to ask next was, what is the fallout from this trade? And I'll give you a couple things that Portland's already said they're looking to move Drew Holiday yesterday. Like they're looking to move Drew Holiday immediately. He'll be on his way out of Portland. I think with all the tampering that was done to get Dame Lillard to be okay with being in Milwaukee, I almost think they have a deal ready for Drew Holiday already. But they don't want to release it for a day or so and kind of let the dust settle. There's 2 questions I have. Well, 3 questions. Number 1, what does this mean for James Harden and the 76ers? Number 2, Drew Holiday, where do you think he'll end up? And number 3, what is Miami going to do? They went all in. They lost Gabe Vincent, Max Strus. I get it. They're not like superstar Hall of Fame players, but their whole offseason was centered around getting Dame Lillard in Miami. And now that didn't happen. So what do you do if you're Miami? Where does James Harden now end up? And does that move the needle on his trade at all? And where does Drew Holiday end up? Control, I'll go to you first.
I mean, I think the biggest thing here and then just one thing I want to add before I answer directly your question. The biggest thing for me is that the Bucks, not only did they get Damian Lillard, they didn't let Damian Lillard go to the team that beat them last year in the playoffs. Like, I think that's a huge thing to bring up. Now, in terms of Drew Holiday, I 100% believe the move that makes the most sense. If I'm Daryl Morey in that Sixers organization, I find a way to do a deal and bring Drew Holiday to Philly. I mean, it just makes a lot of sense. You know, you're still going to have that flexibility because he is going to still be on that expiring contract, similar to what James Harden would be. And, you know, clearly James Harden is a guy that doesn't want to be there. So at this point for the Sixers, you want to still be as competitive as possible. And, you know, right now there aren't really too many superstars that are necessarily on the block where you can get, you know, a lot for moving James Harden at this point. So I think it'd be very smart to try and go get, you know, Drew Holiday, maybe do a 3-team deal, send James Harden, not to Portland, but, you know, obviously you got to facilitate with Portland, send James to where he wants to go, and then kind of just go from there. I also think this could end up being a situation similar to maybe what you saw with Chris Paul a few years back when he got sent to Oklahoma City. You know, obviously Oklahoma City wanted to get rid of Chris Paul right away, but at the same time, they knew they had young guards in the making. SGA at that point was pretty young in his career, and he got to learn from Chris Paul. Portland's in a similar spot. Yes, they're rebuilding, but Scoot Henderson is on the roster. Drew Holiday is a great vet to learn from. He plays the game the right way. He plays hard defensively, and he's always going to give you 110% effort. So I think if you're Portland, obviously you want to do right by Drew, but I think Drew's a guy that's going to buy in. And if you want Scoot to learn from Drew, I could potentially see Drew just staying in Portland for the year and then having all his options on the table next season come free agency.
Shall I'm going to go right to you. I think that there's a lot to be said about Drew Holiday coming back to Philadelphia. And I'll explain to you where my head goes when I say that. I think that the 76ers are going to lose James Harden and PJ Tucker this offseason. PJ Tucker wants to go with James Harden. Like they're like attached at the hip.
Bye.
I think B-Ball Paul ends up starting at the 4 for us, or Tobias where he should be, depending on how the year goes. And I would love a backcourt of Drew Holiday and Tyrese Maxey. It allows Maxey to be a 2, which I think he is. I understand very undersized point guard, very undersized 2, but I think he's a 2. And Drew Holiday can now lock up the best perimeter defender and allow Maxey not to have to play ridiculous defense on the back end. It allows Joel to be your number 1 scorer, Maxey to be your second scorer, with Drew and Toby to play whose night are we at in. I love that team a million times more than the team that we put on the court this year. I really do. Shally, what is your thoughts? What does Miami do? Where does Drew Holiday go? And by the way, I'm scared to death Drew Holiday goes down to Miami. I am scared to death that Drew Holiday goes to Miami. Because yes, correct. The clamps on that with Bam, Jimmy, and Drew, they're going to be winning playoff games 84-79.
And Caleb Martin's a good defender as well.
Correct.
So I just don't know who's going to score on that team, and that's the problem, even if that ends up happening. But, listen, there was a lot of interest of the Sixers trying to get him back, when Drew was still down in New Orleans before he got traded to Milwaukee. Daryl Morey being as aggressive as he is, those phone calls are definitely happening. And listen, the Sixers are at the point now, too, where he's got to move James Harden. Like, we cannot open camp and go through the circus of James Harden being here, not showing up. He's going to come in probably, who knows, 20 pounds overweight. Who the hell knows? It just can't happen. He's got to be gone. Move on, do your thing. If that means taking PJ Tucker with him, by all means, do it. I would love to.
I would trade him for a bag of rocks.
Yeah,
I hate James Harden.
I think it is. The only reason I don't think Drew ends up in Miami is, they talked about deals forever, and they just couldn't come to an agreement on anything that made sense for what Portland wanted to do.
Did it not seem like Portland's trying to be spiteful? to Miami, and I think that really severs negotiation tools between Portland and Miami. It honestly felt like Miami is like, go ahead, find another trade suitor. You're not going to.
I
And
100%
like,
agree with
okay,
that.
you will.
Did you see the report that came out that said after Portland was trying to get Miami on the phone, see what their offers were, Pat Riley never returned their call. So I think Pat Riley was definitely trying to call Portland's bluff, and they said, you know what, fine. Well, for Pat Riley, it doesn't really make too much sense though, because you saw the reports throughout the past week. There was like 6 teams interested in him: Magic, Raptors, like teams that didn't even make sense, but they were calling, and here we are.
But that's why I think as soon as Dame Lillard publicly came out and put it, in writing per se, that he wanted to go to Miami, or then his agent was like, he's not going to show up, he's not going to play, I think Pat Riley thought he held all the cards then. Dame Lillard's not going to go trade to Orlando. That's not going to happen. He's not going to Toronto. So yeah, those teams were calling, but I mean, in Pat Riley's mind, he's looking at they're not realistic. They could offer him the moon and the earth, and Dame's going to be like, I'm not playing there. Milwaukee was probably a team that came in kind of under the radar and realized Drew was going to have to be that piece to move, and with the draft picks and everything else, and they made a strong offer and Portland took it. I 100% agree with Gene. I don't think Portland has any interest in doing business with Miami after the way it all played out, especially when for lack of a better term, Dame pretty much turned like was a turncoat to Portland. Like he pretty much was like, you know what, I agree with Jimmy Butler. I want to go to Miami. That's all I want to do. I'm not interested in anything else. And really kind of hamstrung Portland with what they could do. And then they turned around and got a deal from Milwaukee and was like, well, now you're going to go play with Giannis instead. And of course, Dame was like, okay, like that's cool. And now here we are. So that relationship between Portland and Miami is going to be frosty at best. And I said it before, I don't know what kind of package Miami's going to offer for Drew that would make sense for Portland to give them to him. They've had 8 million chances to get Tyler Hero. They said they're not interested. I mean, you're not giving up Drew Holiday for Caleb Martin. I mean, we're and then obviously Jimmy and Bam are untouchable. So I don't know where you're going there. I don't know where you're going that makes any kind of sense.
I mean, of course, I would imagine, picks would be the key factor there. And I think the other thing is that you're going to have to get a third team involved. I think the most movable asset for Miami would be Duncan Robinson. But, again, you'd have to get another team involved to throw in. I mean, obviously, like Buddy Hield is a name that, one of those contracts that always gets brought up. Like maybe you find a way to throw somebody like that in the deal. But I don't think they move on at this point from Tyler Hero, because like you said earlier, that Heat team's going to struggle to score, and Tyler Hero's one of 2 guys that can create their own shot on that team. So I don't think they move on from Tyler this.
Well, Tyler's got one foot out the door. He doesn't want to be there. He heard how much he was trying to be traded. He does not want to be there.
Hey, Heat culture. You send Udonis and Jimmy to his front door. You sit them down in the chair, lock them in the basement, and you make them want to be there. Bro. Hey, that's what they did. A few years ago, free agency. They locked who they locked in their house and made them sign the deal. Basically, was it DeAndre Jordan?
DeAndre Jordan.
They locked them in his house.
Yeah.
We got a lot to get into. I don't want to get we got football, a ton of it, baseball. We're going to give Ryder Cup picks. There's going to be a lot of stuff to get into. So we can't spend too much more time on this, but just quickly, I got Drew going to Philadelphia. I got James going to the Clippers, and I got Portland finishing more wins this year than they did last year. That's my final statement on this. Cottrell?
I'll agree with all that.
Everything.
I'll say Drew. I think Drew ends up staying in Portland for the time being. I don't think he gets moved before the season starts. I will say Miami is desperate. They won't make a move. I think they're going to hold like stand pat. And as far as Portland's win total goes, I kind of agree with you. I think they are going to be better than they were last year.
Do you think Harden stays put too come season start?
No, he might still be on the Sixers roster, but I don't think he's showing up. And so I do think the Sixers have a time clock where they're trying to do it before the season starts.
It's December 15th. Where's James Harden playing? Where's Drew Holiday playing?
James Harden, I think they get a deal done. I think James Harden is ultimately playing in LA. with the Clippers.
Okay.
I think Drew Holiday is going to be playing with the 76ers.
Okay. Charlie?
Fine with all that. I think there's.
I was fine with any solution that has James Harden leaving here.
Correct.
I get it.
They can offer us, a mascot back, and I'll sign the deal. He's got to go.
Agreed. All right, let's get into NFL. We got to talk about some NFL stuff. Guys, before we talk about anything NFL-wise, we're just going to give a little bit of a recap of week number 3. Dude, 70 freaking points. If I'm Sean Payton, and I don't, oh man, if I was Nathaniel Hackett, I would be so petty. Even though I'm about to get fired from New York because I'm a terrible offense coordinator. If I'm Nathaniel Hackett, I'm like, so that last year was the worst coaching job you ever seen? Because you just got 70 hung on you. Tua threw for over 300. Tyreek had for over 150. Devin Achane over 200 yards rushing. And both running backs had 4 touchdowns each. It's never been done in history of football.
I thought Tua went over 400.
It was impressive.
And they could have scored more.
Yeah, they didn't kick the field goal, tied the record.
Yeah, yep. No, I think they would have broke the record, wouldn't it?
Nah, 73. They would have tied it. But it doesn't matter. They sat on the ball at the end of the game. Their backup running back had a 50-yard run. The fourth stringer.
I would have kicked the field goal, to be honest.
Same.
I almost thought it was disrespectful not to kick the field goal.
I keep receipts, If I'm Tua, clearly they knew, Sean Payton said a couple years ago, Teddy Bridgewater is going to take the job from Tua. And, I'm sure they took that game personal. So you say whatever you want to motivate your team, but I'm sure, Tua definitely took that personal.
Well, there's that, and then there's the backstory of McDonald and the Broncos when that whole coaching thing originally happened with Nathaniel Hackett. They wouldn't even interview him, and he had ties to the organization for a long time. So, I mean, I think there was a lot of people motivated to.
Oh, my McDaniel.
McDaniel, yeah. So
I mean, McDonald. I'm like, which McDonald? I'm like trying to catch up. I'm like, which one?
No, yeah, McDaniel. I mean, he had ties to that organization for a long time, and he tried to get an interview, and they wouldn't even interview him for the head coaching job before they hired Hackett. So there was definitely a little extra motivation in a lot of people's minds on Miami for that game.
I completely agree with you. Let me take it a step further. Let's talk about the Chicago Bears. I've been on record. Remember, I bought the free Justin Field shirt. I've been on record saying that Matt Eberflus was the worst hire for Chicago. I hated the hire to begin with. I thought it was dumb. I disagreed with it. But for whatever reason, I don't know why, I bought into Justin Fields being the savior and making it all work. I'm telling you right now, and I've watched Justin Fields play in college. Kid can play football. Dude, he's digressed. And you see what Trevor Lawrence looked like with Urban Meyer. It looks very similar. It's just not as big of a train wreck. He's not kicking kickers in the leg like Urban was. But I don't want to blame it all on Matt Eberflus because Justin definitely has his fair share. And it's not just Justin, the defense. They got abused by Kansas City. But if you are breaking a percentage pool down and you said out of 100%, how much would you put on Justin Fields? How much would you put on Matt Eberflus? And how much would you put on Ryan Pace for putting that team together in Chicago?
I would, it's funny enough, I think 50% is on Eberflus. I think right now, 40% is on Justin Fields. Now, I feel like a lot of people might think that number is a bit high, but, as good as I think Justin Fields can be, I also fully believe that, like you said, he's regressed at this point. I saw him play last year in the Eberflus offense, and he was running for his life, but he was effective. Obviously, they still weren't winning games. They were in a bad spot, but he was much more effective last season. And as far as Ryan Pace goes, I'm going to give him 10% because I think he went out there and made moves that he was supposed to make. He made moves to pick up pieces on that offensive line. He went out there and got DJ Moore. I think that he's done, what he could. Could the lineup could the team as a whole be a bit better? Absolutely. Defensively, they don't have, they've lost Roquan in the past couple years, and they don't have like necessarily a star defensively. But I think he's done what he was supposed to do to put pieces around
I
Justin.
know it's confusing with the name. Ryan Poles is their current GM. Ryan Pace was their previous GM. I know the names are very similar, but Ryan Pace was the one that was fired. My question is because the roster was terrible. I can't put this on Poles yet. He just took over a year and a half ago. So I think the DJ Moore move was a good move. Ryan Poles, I think, made a good move trading the number 1 pick and keeping Justin Fields. However, Ryan Poles went out and said he's not committed to Justin Fields. He just said that. Just said it. He's like, we'll see how the season goes. We're not committed to him long term and blah, 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 blah. So, like, I look at and look, I don't want to steal anything Colin Cowherd said. I like him, but I don't want to steal other people's intellectual property. But I will say he made a very good point I want to bring up. That the Bears are a train wreck of an organization. You went out and drafted Mitch Trubisky, and you never had a coach to marry with him, right? Nagy was there, and they became married at the hip when you drafted Trubisky and then hired Nagy, right? Because Trubisky had that one season with John Fox, and then they hired a coach that wasn't bought into the quarterback. So he had to be committed to the quarterback they just drafted. And did the same freaking thing with Eberflus. They drafted Justin Fields and then had Matt Nagy for 1 year and then hired Eberflus, who is not married to the quarterback. You know what the mistake the Chicago Bears make all the time? It just blows my mind. It's the same mistake a lot of coaches make that think that their system is just more important than the player. They draft a quarterback in the top 15 and they don't develop an offense around the quarterback that they drafted in the top 15. That doesn't make logical sense to me. Let me ask you a question real quick. You guys are football aficionados. I want to see how you guys do with this. Who is the Bears offensive coordinator? We talked about this last week. Who's the Bears offense coordinator?
I remember hearing it in one ear, right out the other.
Same.
It's Luke Getsy. The former Green Bay Packers. He's been with the Bears since 2022. He was with the Bengals before. This is the organization that you're putting together. Who's the offensive mind? Who's building the offense around Justin Fields? It makes no sense. With that being said, if I'm splitting up the baby, I'm going 25% on the previous GM, Ryan Pace, 25% on the current NFL quarterback and Justin Fields, and 50% on the awful coach in Matt Eberflus. He's terrible. Their defense is terrible. It's not just their offense. This is a defensive coach. He's had the team for 2 years. They can't stop a runny nose. Shally, what do you break it down as?
I'm going 50, 40, 10. And I'm going 10 just because at some point, the team has to get better and has to move on, and that falls on Eberflus. They've added good players this year. I'm not going to sit here and keep harping on how bad the team was 4 years ago. Like, we know that. But just as supposed to be the generational quarterback, turn the page. They went out and got free agents this year. DJ Moore. They made the defense better. So a lot of what I would put on the old GM, I'm putting on the coaching staff now.
Okay,
it's still on them. They got better pieces to coach, and they're not coaching them well. They're not putting them in positions to succeed, for the team to be productive on either side of the football. That falls all on them. Justin's getting a big chunk of it because, as bad as the game plans have been sometimes, he hasn't improved on the things that were against him when he came out of college.
Agreed.
It was holds the ball too long, he misses reads, misses wide open receivers, and he's still doing that now. There's the meme from 2 weeks ago that went viral when he had 3 people out in the route, and he stares at the guy that doesn't have anybody around him for 20 yards in the end zone, doesn't throw the ball to him, holds the ball, and gets sacked. Like, if you are going to be
ended in a sack.
Yeah. It's the same thing. Like, You know, and I think the crazy thing is, I mean, you saw it last week, not to compare them, but CJ Stroud looked like he made a big jump. And a lot of people, you know, we debated it numerous times on here who was going to be better between the two of them. And, you know, I think we all agreed that it was going to be Fields, but CJ looks like he's already making strides that Justin still hasn't made. And he's on a terrible football team. Terrible football team.
But Charlie, can I ask you a question? Do you not believe in D'Amico Ryans as a coach more than you believe in Matt Eberflus?
100% agree.
Okay.
I mean,
I just think that the coaching matters.
It does, but D'Amico's not coaching the offense. D'Amico's coaching the defense, and I mean, and obviously, again, agreed. Culture matters, and I 100% agree with you. Everybody, you know, D'Amico Ryans would be on that short list of people that if we lost Nick Sirianni, he'd be one of the first people I would call. I couldn't agree more. But that being said, listen, I mean, it's a different situation. The circumstances are a little bit different, but like, you know, we've gone back and forth with Justin Herbert or even Trevor Lawrence. Like, this is year 3. Like, is he on a great offensive team? Absolutely not. Does he have a great offensive coordinator? Absolutely not. But he's still doing things that rookies do. He's in year 3. He's got 30-some games under his belt as an NFL quarterback. Like, when is it going to click? You know, like you went out and got him a number 1 in DJ Moore. Now, are the schemes great? Are we getting DJ Moore open every game? No, not even close.
They ran 3 straight screen passes.
Yeah, and again, and that's why I put more of it on the coaching.
Yeah.
But Justin's right there. Justin is not doing fundamental things to help that offense to even put them in a better position. He's missing reads. He's holding the ball. He's taking awful sacks. Like Cottrell brought up a good point. Last year he wasn't reading defense as well, and most of the time he had nobody to throw the ball to anyway. But that at least clicked in his head, and he's like, I gotta get the hell out of here. And like they would at least move the ball because he would run for 150 yards every game. He's not even doing that now. Now he's just sitting there getting sacked. Like
I will say the one thing just to kind of go off that is that I almost wonder, did Eberflus and that Bears organization talk to Justin Fields in the offseason? Because if you even watch their games now, there aren't even as many quarterback designed runs for Justin Fields. Now, I do think Justin has a great arm, but again, like you said, Shiley, his issue is, you know, it takes him a little bit longer to comprehend what the defense is in and making reads. His strength is running the football and you know, being on the move and making those kinds of plays, and they're not scripting those things for him. Now, I can't just, you know, completely let him off the hook because he hasn't played well, but you have to design some quarterback runs, get him in the rhythm of the offense. I mean, they're not even, you know, really getting their rushing attack involved in games at this point. Justin Fields is a threat with his legs, and you know, there's no read options, there's no QB power. That you're not putting Justin Fields in a position to succeed. Does he have to play better? 100%. That's why I gave him 40% of the blame. But even comparing this year from last year, those deficiencies that he's had in the past game, they were somewhat hidden because he ran for 1,000+ yards last year. So I just don't understand, you know, what that Bears team is doing. And I think for me, the press conference that he was at, you know, that got all the attention about him and what he said about the coaching staff, I 100% think that they told him, hey, we don't want you running the football as much now. We want you to stay in the pocket. We want you to make the right read. And that's just not what he's comfortable doing right now. And that's why he looks so out of place.
Yeah, I agree. I'm
going to go back to the point that Gene made, which I think in a weird way, this is kind of a test for him. The GM, I don't think the GM wants Fields to be his quarterback. He's not going to come out and say it that bluntly, but him already saying that he's not connected to him and not attached to him in the future. I agree. I think those conversations we're having, they're like, you got to stay in the pocket more this year and be a quarterback. And, you know, we need to see, you know, what you can do and what you have. Because I fully agree that's what they're going to do. And if they're not convinced on Justin Fields, I think they're going to move on. I think they're going to move on quick. I mean,
I know it can happen. I know it won't happen. But the Bears have 2 draft picks, and both teams are 0-3. So like right now they'll have the first and second pick. They have the Panthers pick and their own pick. What would it take? And I know it can't happen because of the amount of money they signed for. Let me just say, But hey, man, if I'm the Chicago Bears, I fire Matt Eberflus and I say, listen, Lincoln Riley, you coached him at Oklahoma, you coached him at USC. We have the first draft pick. How about you and Caleb Williams come and play in Chicago? And that's our team going forward. You have the coach, you have the quarterback that's played with each other for years, and you basically throw a dump. Now, listen, the McCaskey family are not going to do this. They're not going to throw a boatload of money at Lincoln Riley to make that happen. You'd have to throw a ton of money to get him out of that USC contract. I get it. But, like, wouldn't that be the move at this point and move on from Justin Fields and try to get assets? Like, if I'm the Jets, why would I not offer them a third-round pick for Justin Fields right now?
I mean, are you convinced you're getting better there?
Yes. Oh, yes. You're not convinced you're getting better than Zach Wilson? Zach Wilson, Justin Fields has looked terrible, and he's looked light years better than Zach Wilson.
I am not going to lie to you. At this point, how Zach Wilson has looked, like, there's quarterbacks that aren't even thinking about getting playing time right now. Like, Will Levis would be better on the Jets. Malik 100%. Willis would be better on the Jets. Like, Kellen Mond. Like, I think you can put anybody in that Jets quarterback position, and that team would just believe in them more than they believe in Zach Wilson. They've been talking about it all over ESPN, and I think that the biggest thing with that Jets team is that at this point, I think every week they go out there and they are fully not expecting to win because Zach Wilson is their quarterback. He was with the team last year. You saw how bad they were. Aaron Rodgers goes down. They think they have a shot this year right now. And
did you see Garrett Wilson's face when they told him in the interview that they signed Trevor Siemian?
It lit up. Trevor Siemian's a nobody.
Well, I mean, there's reports coming out already that Robert Saleh is getting close to losing that locker room because nobody wants Zach Wilson to play.
It makes sense. Like, how can you
see their locker? Did you see their sideline Sunday?
Yeah, everybody was upset. Michael Carter, Garrett Wilson,
a fourth-string running back.
I just don't know how Robert Saleh is a great coach, and I don't know how you can sit there and it's one thing if you tell the media one thing and you're saying other things behind closed doors, but I don't know how you can go up there every single week, seeing how Zach Wilson plays and say, no, we believe in this guy and we think he's the guy for the job and we're comfortable throwing him out there at quarterback. Like, I just don't understand it at all.
They're going to look terrible this Sunday night. They're playing the Chiefs this Sunday night.
I think they're in a really tough spot. I think because you're not going to go, you don't want to trade draft capital to go get Justin Fields, who is better than Zach Wilson. They're not a serious contender with Justin Fields as their quarterback. They're not. They run a pro style offense. They're not going to run Justin Fields all over the field and do all those type things. It's almost
like Nathaniel Hackett made a mobile quarterback look last year.
Yeah. So I mean, I agreed. So let's just be honest about it. So let's take Justin Fields off the table. I think the Kirk Cousins ones make sense, but I think Minnesota is also going to be like, we want something more for it because we're about to blow up our team. We have to get another quarterback in here to match with Jetta's long term. I'm not doing. I'm not giving up. Him for nothing.
That's why they tanked.
And then I think that's tough, dude. That's a tough sell. Tanking in the NFL, I think, with some people,
you lose the whole locker room to tank.
Yeah, you can't do it.
I'm not saying you. I'm saying at this point you're 0-3. If you trade Kirk Cousins,
they're 1-2.
At this point you're not.
Oh, you're talking about Minnesota.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
At this point, you're not making. I mean, statistically, you're not making the playoffs this year. So trading Kirk Cousins, he's not going to be on the roster anyway next year.
You might lose Justin Jefferson if you do that.
And that's what you can't do. You can't afford it.
I'm not going to lie. You got time to rebuild that relationship.
I hear you. You're right.
That's a risk, man. That is a risky risk because there's nobody in the NFL that wouldn't move hell and earth to get him. He's a generational wide receiver.
I 100% agree, but at the same time, he has to also realize that Kirk Cousins is not going to be his quarterback next year, no matter which way you slice it. So if I'm moving for a third rounder now and, you miss out on him for at this point, 14 more games this year, or, we get that third round pick and we have a legit shot at getting one of the top quarterbacks in this upcoming draft, hey, if you got sour grapes for 14 games, you might have to live with that because he's not going to be your guy regardless. So,
I don't
Well,
agree with that.
We got one more pre-topic before we go into some games, and I just want to make this very clear. With just a little pre-topic. There's 3 teams left. Shout out to Alex Elmore putting this up. This is perfect. There's 3 teams left that are undefeated in the NFL. It's Miami Dolphins, San Francisco 49ers, and the Philadelphia Eagles. Which team loses first? And which team is the last team to remain unbeaten?
I have to look at schedules real quick.
Cottrell, you want to start that one? Or
yeah,
I know you entered it in the chat. That's why I asked.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that ultimately the Eagles are going to be the first team to lose, and it's not. And I actually think that's a team that potentially will go the farthest. But I think the Eagles are going to be the first team to lose. I just think there's going to be a game their offense doesn't click, and defense is going to ball out, but it just won't be enough. Miami's the one pick that kind of makes sense there because, Tua. But I'm going to go with the Eagles to lose first. And I think the 49ers will be the last undefeated team.
You haven't looked at schedules, man. I completely disagree with you. I think Miami loses. Well, hold on. I think Miami loses first. I think they lose this Sunday to Buffalo.
Well, see, I think they get through Buffalo.
I think they lose this Sunday to Buffalo. And I think the 49ers lose second because their schedule after this week, they play Arizona this week. They're going to run through them. They play the Browns and they play the Cowboys back-to-back weeks. They're losing one of those football games. Whereas Philadelphia, who I think, if I'm being completely honest, I think Philadelphia looks the worst out of the 3 of those teams. Not saying that who cares? They're winning football games. Philadelphia plays Washington at home, the Rams, the Jets, and Zach Wilson in that situation before they play the Dolphins on October 22nd in Philadelphia. I think Philadelphia is the last remaining unbeaten team. And I don't think it's because they're the best team in football. I just think you don't play at Cleveland and Dallas and back-to-back weeks and win both those football games. I just don't believe it.
Can I be honest with you?
Yeah.
I think all these teams are going to be still undefeated 3 weeks from now. And the game that's going to decide that first unbeaten is going to be Miami and Philadelphia. And I think Miami ultimately wins that game. Just with their speed and things like that. Like, I think that's going to be the first game where that the offense just won't be able to put up enough points. I think Philly's the better team.
Just to be clear, that Dolphins offense is the perfect offense to go against Philadelphia. They got quick receivers and Tua gets the ball out quick. And I think that a lot of people don't realize, dude, he's frustrating defensive lines because he's literally dropping back and throwing it immediately.
Yep. And
they're like rushing for a second or two and then being like, dude, it's not even worth it. And then when he does drop back, you literally have a lot of guys quitting because they're expecting the ball to come out so quick. Shally, give me your first loss. Give me your last unbeaten.
I'm going to go with the Eagles, actually, because I think the 49ers at home against the Cowboys, I think the 49ers win that game. I think it's going to be kind of a lot of what happened last week. I think the 49ers are going to make Dak look stupid.
That's not hard.
It's not hard. He's the reason that team doesn't win. Just whatever. I think the Browns is a really tricky game. But San Francisco is just so efficient right now. I don't know. I just haven't seen enough from Cleveland's offense that I think they could consistently put up points against that defense right now. So, I said at the beginning of the year, I think the Eagles start 6-7-0 until they get to that game. I think that's their first real test. And I'll take the Eagles at home. I think it'll be a very good matchup. I think the Eagles will move the ball. I do think Miami will put up points in that game. I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball though. And that is ultimately what the decider is for me. I think the Eagles beat the Dolphins. I think they're the last team standing.
I think the Eagles, the first game they lose will be a weird game that they're not supposed to lose. I don't know which one it is, but I think the first game the Eagles lose will be like something like next week at the Rams.
I was going to say the Rams is like the one like tricky one flying across across the country.
Or they could beat the Dolphins on October 22nd and then lose at the Commanders on the 29th. I could just see that, right? Because that's the
Like
week
last
before
year.
the Cowboys game. Yeah, they know. But seriously, the trap games are real in the NFL. Like look-ahead games are real. And the Eagles have the Cowboys, Chiefs, Bills, 49ers back-to-back weeks. Like those four, it's ridiculous.
And I will say too, like especially as you get later on in the season, obviously every game, teams are trying to win. But when you have that undefeated tag, on you, you're going to get every team's best shot, those days because they want to be that team that knocks you off. So, once you get into the 7-0, 8-0s, like again, you saw it last year with the Commanders. The Commanders weren't even close to being a better team than the Eagles, but they went out there, they gave them their best shot. Eagles weren't clicking, and they ultimately got a win. It's going to be interesting to see. The Dolphins 100% can lose this week, and the 49ers, I get it. They have to travel to Cleveland, and then they also have that game right after against the Cowboys, but there's going to be a point where I just think, the 49ers are better than both those teams. I think they're going to win both those games. And I think it is going to come down to that Dolphins-Eagles matchup.
Okay.
Eagles have just a brutal 6-game stretch, man.
Yeah.
They go Cowboys, Chiefs, Bills, 49ers, Cowboys again, and then have to fly cross country in the middle of December to play Seattle.
I will say we might be wrong, Gene, about the record ended up worse than last season. I was expecting them to drop, one of those weird ones that they're not supposed to. They haven't done it so far.
You said it though. If they beat New England, dude, they were going to be 6-0. Like especially after Rodgers got hurt. Like there's no way. They're not losing to Washington home. I don't think they're losing to the Rams. I think they're going to kill the Rams, and they're going to go to New York and beat the hell out of the Jets. Unless somebody other than Zach Wilson is the quarterback of that team by then.
Let's get into our preview games. Thursday Night Football, Detroit at Green Bay. Finally got a good one. Looking forward to I'm kidding. The first one was a good one too, but the last two were not really. But you got who do you got in Detroit at Green Bay? Green Bay apparently is going to have Aaron Jones back and Christian Watson. I was so sick to my stomach. I picked them, and then like an hour before game time, it was like Bakhtiari, Aaron Jones, Christian Watson. They're all sitting. I'm like, what the hell happened? They were all supposed to play. I don't know if they play. To me, it doesn't matter. I think Detroit's a better football team. I think Detroit goes in there, they get the win. I'm taking the Lions in this one. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jahmyr Gibbs, Jared Goff, Aiden Hutchinson, Jack Campbell. Give me the Lions.
I like the Lions as well. I think they're the better football team, and I think they're playing good football right now, which is important. I think the Green Bay Packers, it's kind of really hard to gauge, really what they are because they've shown flashes with the injuries. It's tough, and it's tough to sit here and say because, we don't know for sure who's going to suit up tomorrow night. Obviously, if Aaron Jones and Watson play, that's huge for Jared Love to have more weapons and, ease into the game a little bit more and have options and places to go with the ball. But I like Detroit. I just think they're playing really good football right now. I think they're playing good football. They're solid on both sides of the ball. You already mentioned Amon-Ra St. Brown. Goff looks great again. Jahmyr Gibbs has showed burst of looking good. David Montgomery, it's kind of been the bell cow guy there for short yardage and, one back sets and, kind of carving out his own role in the team. So I'm going with Detroit as well. I think Detroit wins a very close game.
I agree. It's close. I listen. Go ahead, Joe.
I got the Lions winning as well. I think this game it's important that last year they beat the Packers, and they know what it's like to win at Lambeau. So I think that team, they know they can go in there and win. And at this point, I think they got a stranglehold on that division. They know they're the best team there, and I think they go there and they take care of business. Jahmyr Gibbs is the one piece that's been kind of, the biggest question mark so far. They haven't involved them as much in the offense as I was expecting to. I think this could potentially be the game where, you see Jahmyr Gibbs, really just go off and have that first just explosive game where he gets into the end zone, and you see him potentially with, 18 to 20 carries and, catches some passes out the backfield. So I like the Lions to win this one. I think they get after Jordan Love, and, they ultimately win the football game.
Let's talk about the sleepwalk game. I don't even know why we're talking about it. Love you, Shal, but this game is going to be terrible. You got a backup quarterback in New Orleans. They stink. They just blew a lead to Jordan Love. They were up like 100-0. Jameis Winston's awful still. I was wondering when the LASIK would come through and he would actually play better, but that didn't happen. You got the New Orleans Saints. I don't think Derek Carr is going to play. You got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who absolutely got bludgeoned by the Eagles on Monday night. They're on a short week. They got to play out in New Orleans. Give me New Orleans just because I think their defense is better, and I think their defense will do exactly what Philadelphia's defense did to Tampa Bay and contain Baker and knock him down and make Baker pay for holding the ball like the Eagles did all night. So I'll take New Orleans in this one, but I think the game sucks. I wouldn't watch it. Like, I love football. I'll watch it on all 22, but I would never turn this game on and be like, wow, can't wait for Bucs Saints.
And I'm right there.
Good.
I was gonna say I'm right there with you, Gene. I'm taking the Saints as well. I think this game is one of those that the Saints are in the Bucs' head. I mean, even while Tom Brady was there, those Saints teams would consistently beat Tampa Bay. And the biggest matchup, Marshawn Lattimore, Mike Evans. Marshawn Lattimore is going to make Mike Evans a non-factor in this one. The Saints play a lot of man coverage, and they're going to make Baker throw the ball into tight windows. I think this is going to be a game where Baker throws, a couple bad interceptions, and the Saints ultimately win the football game. Other small token to mention, Alvin Kamara is going to be back this game. So Jameis Winston is going to have a guy that he can dump the ball off to all the time, because clearly we know Jameis isn't that guy to, thread the needle downfield and get stuff done. So I think you're going to see Alvin Kamara featured a lot, maybe a lot of screens, a lot of dump offs with Jameis. They're going to make his job a lot easier this week, but I got the Saints winning.
I like the Saints too. For a lot of the reasons you guys already said, I think you get a lot of Lattimore Evans. I don't think he's going to take him away. I think Mike will still get his 80 to 100 yards, but I don't think it's going to be anything explosive. I don't think Tampa Bay is going to be able to run the ball just like they couldn't against the Eagles. I like New Orleans' defensive line a lot. Get pressure on Baker, just like Gene said. Jameis usually plays a little bit better, in the Superdome at home. I think he makes enough big plays. Probably throws one ridiculous interception that everybody's watching it will laugh. But I like New Orleans. I think New Orleans probably wins from by a touchdown at least.
Okay, we got Gardner Minshew. I'm kidding. We got the Baltimore Ravens going up against the Cleveland Browns this week. I have a weird pick on this one. It's a weird breakdown. So, Shally, why don't you start us off? I want to go last on this
one. This one's weird. This is in Cleveland, correct?
It is indeed.
I'm gonna go against my better judgment here, and I'm gonna take the Browns. I think Deshaun Watson last week at times showed glimpses that he was kind of getting it back and looked like he was in the flow of a game, and then he threw fumble, interception. I don't know what the hell you want to call it. I've never seen a quarterback throw the ball 10 yards backwards before, but made one of the biggest boner plays I've ever seen as well. I'm gonna take Cleveland's defense, and I think Deshaun does just enough at home. Very low scoring, physical type game. I don't think there's a lot of. I think if you're an old school football fan, this is probably a really exciting game to watch. I think it's gonna be a lot of defense, a lot of sacks, a lot of 3 and outs, a lot of and it's a divisional game. They're used to playing each other. They're very familiar with each other. I'll take Cleveland like 19-17 at home.
So I got the Browns winning this one. I think the Browns defense has played great football so far. They've only allowed 1 touchdown so far this season. I think with all the pieces that are missing right now for Baltimore, obviously, Stanley's not healthy. Odell's not healthy. They got issues with their defense. Marlon Humphrey's, not healthy. I think the Ravens are in a tough spot right now, and you saw those injuries prove to be big in that game last week against the Colts. I think that with this Browns team as well, yes, Deshaun made an egregious mistake by throwing the ball 10 yards behind him to Elijah Moore. And I, don't understand what he was thinking there. But I think that was the best game that Deshaun Watson has played so far with the Browns. Like, he's looking like he's turned the corner. Say what you want about that Tennessee defense, but just watching those passes, along the sidelines to Amari Cooper, to Donovan Peoples-Jones, he made some great plays there. And I think he realizes that a lot more of the load is going to be on his shoulders with Nick Chubb out the game. And I think in a way that kind of made him play a little bit more free. So I think that the Browns will win this game. I do think it's going to be a little bit more lower scoring. I see this one being Browns 20, Ravens 13.
I have a stupid prediction. Totally dumb. I think the Baltimore Ravens beat the Cleveland Browns in a shootout this week. I think that here's just my thought process. I think John Harbaugh at home thought he could sit a bunch of his weary, injured starters and get a win over Indianapolis on a crappy, rainy day and get them healthy and prepared to play Cleveland. I think it was a look-ahead game for Baltimore, and I think they did their absolute best to try to sneak out of there with a win, headed into a big divisional match versus Baltimore. I really believe it. They're all back at practice already. Odell Beckham Jr. wasn't expecting to miss time after the injury. He's back at practice. Tyler Linderbaum's back at practice. Ronnie Stanley's back at practice. I think that they looked ahead. It looked like that way to me. I think this is the game in which Harbaugh knows that defense and he's went up against it a ton. I think Watson's starting to come into his own, and I think both teams just have good offensive days. I don't think it's neither one of them have really bad defenses. I just think they both have really good offensive days. And I think that the Ravens win this one 35-32 in a weird high-scoring game that not everyone's expecting. I still think the Browns finish higher than the Ravens in the division. I think the Browns will get them back in Baltimore. But I think this is what you would call the exhale game for Cleveland, right? I told you Cleveland was going to beat up on Tennessee. That was one of my picks last week. I was huge on them. I loved Cleveland over Tennessee. I think that was the game to be like, we are good without, like, we're going to win this one and Nick Chubb's out. And it's we're going to come together and win this game. And I think this week will be the little bit of a letdown. I think that Odell Beckham Jr. will be back. Zay Flowers will look good. I think the Baltimore Ravens win this one. I think the offense finally gets together. And I think that Ravens win this one 35-32. Weird game, but all right. So let's talk about the game of the week. Miami Dolphins at the Buffalo Bills. Cottrell, you've not started us once. Why don't you start on this one?
So I have the Miami Dolphins winning this one. I do think that Josh Allen, I know, plays very well against Miami, historically. And I do think Josh Allen will have a good day in this one. I just think right now with the way that Miami Dolphins offense is looking, I don't know how, I don't know if Buffalo has the tools to necessarily slow them down. I think this is going to be one of those high-scoring games. You mentioned 35-32. I think for this game, you're going to be 38-34, 41-38. Like, I think this is going to be one of those shootouts. And, I think for Miami, with them having success on the ground, that alleviates some of that pressure off of Tua. And I think there's a chance a good chance they get Jalen Waddle back this week. So they put up 70 points last week without their second best weapon, who is arguably, top 10, top 15 receiver. So I think the Dolphins, they keep it rolling. They win this game and, move on with that undefeated season.
There's something to be said about one team having another team's number.
There is.
The Buffalo Bills have beaten the Miami Dolphins 9 out of the last 10 times. With that one loss being that weird, freaky loss in Miami last year, 21-19 game. It was terrible. It was a weird game. You watched it. In Buffalo, I think Buffalo's seen exactly what happened with Miami this past week. Buffalo's defense looked incredible this past week versus Washington. Granted, Sam Howell, but that offense has looked good 2 straight weeks. Buffalo's defense swallowed him up, turned the ball over, got after the quarterback. I think the Buffalo Bills win this football game. And I think it's surprisingly lower scoring than you would expect it to be. I still think they're going to put up 40 points, but like you think of this game, you're like, it might be 80 points. Like you might get a 42-39 game. I think this game's 27-20 Buffalo. Buffalo wins this one. I think that, you should look out for press coverage around the outside with safety over top for Tyreek Hill. And I think that they're going to take away the slant ball and make Tua throw in that Buffalo wind downfield. And I think they cause a couple turnovers. I think this is the first game the Miami Dolphins offense looks human. They haven't looked human all year. I think this is the game they lose. I got 27-20 Buffalo.
I'm not going to get in because I'm too much because I'm picking it. But
okay.
I think Buffalo finally looked great last week. A bit, in playing Washington, and I don't want to put too much stock into that. I also don't think you could expect an NFL team to score 70 points every single week. So I do think there's going to be a come down to earth moment at some point for Miami. You factor in all the previous matchups, and like Gene said, 9-1 in the last 10. I think it comes down to how well Tua plays, how well he can throw non-slant, and then can Buffalo run the ball against Miami and control the clock a little bit. Again, they're showing concerted effort to run the ball this year, and it's reaped its rewards. So I think it's going to be interesting. I think it's a very good game, and it's the best game of the week for a reason.
Okay, well, let's get into NFL pick'em. Shally, you're running away with it right now, early, but man, 6-2-1. It's a hell of a start to the season. I got back on track 2-1 last week. My one terrible pick was the Buffalo Bills. Cottrell got back on track 2-1 last week. Shally, give us the order.
I'll let the genius start us off this week, then Cottrell, then myself.
All right, so same order as last week, and that's okay. First one I already touched on. I like the Baltimore Ravens +3 over the Cleveland Browns. I'll take the 3 points in case there's a field goal that ends the game where the Browns win the game, but I think the Baltimore Ravens win this game outright. I'll take the Ravens +3 to win the football game over Cleveland. Second one, I think that one team severely underrated and has underperformed, and one team is severely overrated and overperformed, and they came down to earth last week. I like the Jacksonville Jaguars at their second home in London, -3 over the Atlanta Falcons. Desmond Ridder stinks. He's terrible. I'll say it every week. Did you watch the game he won versus Green Bay? He threw 3 balls that literally were perfect passes to the Green Bay defenders. They dropped them. Last week, Detroit ate them alive. I think it happens again this week. I like Jacksonville over there in their second home in London. And this last one pains me to say, but it's the way I feel. I actually think it might be the easiest game of the week. Give me the Dallas Cowboys -6.5 over the New England Patriots. I think Dallas absolutely demolishes New England and Dallas. I think this is a get-right game for them after losing that game to Arizona. I think that, losing Trevon Diggs on Thursday when you're playing a road game and they left on Friday to an injury, I think that affected them. I think they looked past Arizona. Arizona was terrible. I think this is a get-right game for Dallas. I think Dallas bullies New England. I think New England's offense is still terrible, and I think Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence are going to give Mac Jones all he can handle in that backfield. I'll take the Dallas Cowboys -6.5. I think they could beat them by 30, if I'm being honest with you. I think this is the blowout of the week. I'll take the Cowboys -6.5.
So I'm going to start with the game that, it seems like every week at this point, Gene, we are on the same side of things, and this week is no different. My first game of the week, I have the Jags -3 versus the Falcons in London for all the same reasons that you had. And I don't care who plays or doesn't play for those Jaguars. I think last week, with that loss they had to that Texans team, I think they're gonna be hungry, and they realize that yes, we are better than these other teams out here, but we have to play like it, So I think they go into London, and Calvin Ridley going up against his old team. I think you're going to see Calvin Ridley go off in that game. Like I'm talking 100+ yards, touchdown, maybe even 2 in that one. I think he takes that game very personal. Falcons didn't do him dirty by any means, but I think he takes that game personal because it is his old team, and that's where he was ultimately suspended. So I love the Jags -3 there. And then next game I like the under 41.5 Pittsburgh at the Texans. Bit of a weird game there, but right now for that Houston Texans team, they're coming off of a big win last week against a divisional opponent. But this week, their starting left tackle and Laramie Tunsil's not going to play this week. And their backup left tackle, it just came out today that he most likely won't play either. And I think for that against this Pittsburgh Steelers team, that's a recipe for disaster. I think they're going to get back there, get after CJ Stroud, make him very uncomfortable. But if you watch the Steelers play football at all so far this season, Matt Canada couldn't coach his way out of a paper bag. So I think both teams are going to struggle offensively in that one. I think it's going to be a low-scoring affair. Pittsburgh's going to win just because, I don't think CJ will have anything to do with that Pittsburgh defense, but I like the under 41.5 there. The other game I like, over 46, Denver at Chicago. This is a game where something has got to give. Last week, we saw Denver Broncos gave up 70 points to the Miami Dolphins. Now, obviously, Chicago doesn't have the same firepower that Miami does, but clearly, defense isn't this Denver Broncos strong suit at this point. So I think Chicago will be able to score, and they have to try and pick up the pieces there. And I think on the flip side of it, if you're Denver and Russell Wilson and Sean Payton, you got to find a way to put something together. There's people already talking about, how does this marriage end? Is it going to be Russell Wilson out the door? Is it going to be Sean Payton? You got to find a way to make this work. And this Chicago Bears team is right for the picking. I think you can easily put up 30 to 35 points on them. And, I think if that's the case, over 46 seems like an easy play there. So those are my 3 picks for the week.
All right, so my first pick, I'll make this easy. It's going to be a clean sweep. I got Jacksonville -3 against Atlanta over in London. It is their home away from home. I think Jacksonville's going over there every single year. Kyle Edwards brought up, a really good point that, me, myself, and even Gene mentions all the time. Atlanta stinks everywhere but Atlanta. They play well at home. They always play well at home. They play above their heads probably a little bit, but Desmond Ridder stinks. I think, Cottrell brought up a good point. One of the reasons I took it as well, I think Calvin Ridley is up for this game. I also think Doug Peterson and Trevor kind of get back on the same page, probably simplify things a little bit. I think Jacksonville looks very efficient and very sharp this Sunday morning. So I think Jacksonville big -3 over in London. The second game, I'm taking the Eagles at home -8.5. I think they're playing hot right now. I still don't think they've played their best game. I think the offense is starting to click more and more. Defense has been dominant. I think they're going to be in Sam Howell's face all game. I think Slay, Bradbury, somebody probably, 1 or 2 interceptions as well. And I don't think Washington's going to be able to slow down that offense. I think, the Eagles put up another 30 spot somewhere in here. I don't think Washington can keep pace with that at all. So I'll take the Eagles -8.5. And the last game, the game we just previewed, I'm taking Miami +3 in Buffalo. As much as I like Buffalo and I think they've looked better, they did it against Washington. I think doing it against Miami is a different beast. I don't think Miami's going to score anywhere close to 70. I think they come down to earth a little bit. I think they have Jalen Waddle back. I think Tua makes enough plays, gets the ball out quick enough. They run the ball. I don't think Buffalo's defense is as good as it's been in the past. I like Miami to keep that close, maybe break the streak, maybe win it outright, but I think it's a close game down the stretch. I'll take Miami +3.
I hear you. I listen. No one wants to take Cincy -2.5 versus the Titans. I feel like that's easy money. That's what my man Joseph Jeffer said.
It's tough to watch Joe Burrow play right now, man. I mean, they haven't been shotgun, but like you can even see when like he's going back in his drops, like he's not putting weight on that leg really. Like he's just not right, and he's going to try to for lack of a better term limp his way through this, but he's just not 100%, and until he is, it's tough. Cincinnati's margin of error is a lot smaller with him not being 100% healthy.
I heard somebody say this past week Joe Burrow's regressed.
No,
I don't know how you can say that.
he's hurt.
He's hurt.
He's hurt. It'd be like a pitcher having like a bad calf on like his push-off leg. Like he's not going to throw the balls hard. Like he's hurt. New OC. It's a lot going on right now in Cincinnati.
Okay. Let's get into some college football. And with that, I'll pass it over to the collegiate one himself, College Cottrell, to introduce us our games and our topics this week. By the way, if you want a little bit more in-depth breakdown of college football, do not forget to listen to Coast to Coast this Saturday morning. Those guys are breaking down college football. They're going to have their first Heisman watch this week. It's a lot of good stuff going on that program. So make sure you tune in to Coast on Saturday morning. But Wire2Wire's got you covered. So let's get started. Cottrell, lead us off.
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's only right to start with the first game that's going to be happening, and a game that we won't be able to talk about on Coast to Coast because it's happening Friday night. We got Utah traveling to Oregon State for that matchup.
So that's a fun one to talk about, right? And I think that, and the spread makes me really feel like Oregon State's going to win this football game, but I don't believe it, right? Like, I don't believe it. Like, I believe that Utah's still going to win the football game. I think DJU playing against great defenses like Utah is going to look like DJU again, like he looked last year in Clemson. I don't think he's that good. I still don't think he's that good. I think he'll look good versus very wide open teams, and he could look good versus bad defenses. But when he goes up against a defense like Utah, I think DJU fails. Give me Utah on this one. I like Utah. I'll take them plus 3.5, whatever you want to do. But I like Utah over Oregon State.
Yeah, so I mean, we talked about how free he was playing and how great he looked, and then he went out last week and didn't have the best game in the world, and Oregon State lost their first game of the week or year. Sorry, excuse me. And you have Utah coming in and with the big question mark still if they're going to try to ride their back up to one more win, or is Cam Rising going to play? So I tend to agree with Gene on this one. Corvallis is not an easy place to play. Especially with it being during the week, probably the student section will probably be crazy. A bunch of drunk kids in the stadium, for a primetime game. But I like Utah's defense. They're just solid. Like they are a team that is 100%. They're not flashy, but they're going to make you beat them. And if you can't, excel at every facet of the game and execute and be efficient, you turn the ball over, they're just going to run the ball and drain the clock, and then you're just out of possessions. That's how they play football, especially without Cam Rising. So I'm with Gene. I don't know if I hope they win the game outright because Utah's kind of turning into like the David versus the Goliath type thing here. But I definitely think they cover. I think it's a close game. I don't have any faith that Oregon State's going to blow them out of the water. So I'll take Utah as well plus the 3.5.
Well, I guess here's where we'll disagree. I'm taking Oregon State in this one. I don't think Cam Rising is going to play. I think there's something more to this Cam Rising injury and his, recovery time than Utah's really putting out there. There was a, question marks about him potentially playing week 1 against Florida. And now we're up to week 5 at this point. And, he's still not officially back yet. So I think they're really playing a cat and mouse game. They want teams to prepare as if Cam might potentially play. And, I just think that this week, that Utah team, clearly they play phenomenal at home. I think them traveling to Oregon State, I believe that DJU, he's going to take care of business at home. I think this is going to be a big game for him. I can see him throwing up, 275, 300 passing yards in this one, and ultimately being the difference maker and giving Utah their first loss of the season.
And I know I won't have the opportunity to really talk about this on Coast to Coast Saturday morning, but can we, and we're kind of glazing over it again, can we really give Cam Ward his credit? Like,
facts.
My guy has been the best quarterback in college football, not named Michael Penix this year. It's the truth. Like, I'm not saying he's better than Caleb Williams. I'm not saying he's better than other quarterbacks. But statistically and the games he's played, he's been the best quarterback in college football, not named Michael Penix. Cameron Ward's 13 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. The guy looked incredible last week versus Oregon State, whereas DJU was 50%, 1 touchdown, 1 pick.
Yep.
It was totally different. The quarterback play of Cameron Ward won that football game. Washington State's playing great football, man. Give them all the credit in the world. They play UCLA this week. That's another big matchup. And I'm sure you guys will break that down on Saturday, but that's a great matchup.
I mean, we said at the beginning of the year, the two teams, that will absolutely win a game that they shouldn't and probably ruin somebody's season were Oregon State and Washington State. I think you're on pace to see it. Washington State, another, those fans show up, man. Like if Washington State gets into the year, 6-7-0 before they get into the really heavy part of their schedule, nobody wants to go to Pullman and face Cam Ward and an undefeated Washington State team. I promise you.
I just feel like he's the best story that no one talks about.
Yeah, he's not getting
no one giving his credit.
I mean, Michael Penix Jr.'s numbers right now are just ungodly, just something different.
I said outside Michael Penix.
Yeah, so it's he's playing on the number, what are they, 8 ranked team in the country. So it's deservedly so. I mean, I'm glad he finally really figured it out in his 7th year of college. But Cam Ward should get some more love.
Cam Ward was hot topic last week on Coast to Coast. We definitely showed him some love. So, and we'll continue to do so as long as he puts up these performances.
You guys are great at college football, but like I'm talking about the
national.
ESPNs, I'm talking about the national broadcasting. Like I'm not kidding with you. I hear and look, dude, Shedeur deserves his credit, and I'm not just bringing Shedeur up, but like there's Drake May, like all these quarterbacks you hear about every single week on college campuses, but Cameron Ward, you never hear about him. He's like never talked about.
I would say he took a little bit of a jump this week. And again, I think if that team continues to stay undefeated and stay relevant and starts knocking off good teams, I think you're going to hear more and more about him.
Good.
With Drake May and all those guys, I mean, they were all on the preseason list. So, I mean, they had a lot of hype coming in, especially based off what they did last year. Cam Ward, to his credit, trying to make his own room and introduce himself and, say, hey, I'm here. Look at me.
He did that.
So, and then I think the one other thing that, kind of went against Cam Ward is that game, Washington State against Oregon State, knew it was going to be phenomenal. We said it last week that on Coast to Coast that it might end up being the best game of that weekend. And it definitely lived up to the hype, but they were goofy for putting it up with Notre Dame and Ohio State. So there was so many people that didn't even get to watch it live. They see Cam Ward's numbers, but they didn't even know how great he looked in that one because, everybody was tuned in watching Ohio State, Notre Dame.
It's facts.
They botched the schedule horribly last week.
They did. True. Next game.
All right, next one. I think this one will be relatively quick this week. So let's go. Boulder, Colorado, USC at Colorado.
I told you last week. You told me I was nuts. I told you what Oregon was going to do to them. USC is not going to look as good as Oregon did last week in Oregon. Colorado will put up a fight this week. I still think USC wins the game. I don't know if they cover. I think going to Boulder, Colorado is different. I think that USC defense is terrible. I think Shakir Sanders throws all over them. I think it's a high scoring game, and I think it's what you thought last week could have been with Oregon. I think that Colorado hangs around in this game. I think USC beats them by 17. I'll take USC in this one. I think Caleb Williams doesn't get stopped. The Colorado defense ain't stopping anybody. They're not good, especially without Travis Hunter. They're not good. I'll take USC in this one. I got them winning 49-32.
I agree with a lot of what you said, but I'm picking it, so I'm not really going to go into it right now.
Okay.
So I am with you, Gene. I do believe that Colorado will fight more in this one. It is, a home game for them. And I think there is something to be said about getting punched in the mouth last week. Obviously, there was a lot of people, myself included, that thought they would have a chance to keep that game close. And I didn't pick them to win last week, but I definitely thought they would put up more of a fighting chance than what they did. So I do think that Colorado team will bounce back. So I think you made a great point about USC and their defense not being up to par. And Caleb Williams is going to put up a ton of points in that game. But on the flip side of it, I don't think USC has the defense. You saw what San Jose State looked like against that USC defense. So I think Shedeur is going to be able to move the ball up and down the field and, somewhat keep that game close. So I like USC to win, but I definitely think that Colorado covers there.
Okay. I get it. I follow everything that we're saying. I feel like I'm back in the race of being able to not have to drive out to Ohio.
You're not. That was an expected loss.
I think this is an expected loss. I think they got a few of them.
It was beforehand, before the season. I wasn't expecting.
I'm not gonna lie. We talked about it the other day, and I went back through the schedule. I think if this was fantasy, I think the win percentage would be in Gene's favor right now. Not by a lot, but I think it's probably like 57-43.
Can we go through it real quick?
Absolutely. But before the season started, no one was expecting Colorado to beat USC or
told you. I'm not giving you any more flowers. You're done. You're cut off from flowers. We're not doing this anymore.
What are you talking about?
I mean, like week 9, you're gonna be like, remember when I said Colorado was gonna start 3-0? You're done.
No. I just said no one was expecting them to beat USC or Oregon. That's all I said.
Bill and Cottrell, questions. I'm just going to go through it real quick. You guys say win or loss. We don't have to go to USC because we all picked them to lose versus USC. So next week they play at Arizona State.
Win.
Shall we?
Tough. They're not going to beat Arizona and Arizona State. They're going to lose to one of them.
I think they lose Arizona State. I have them beating Arizona State, and I have them beating Stanford in Boulder. So I think they'll be 5-2 after Stanford game.
Okay. So what's after that?
UCLA at UCLA.
Loss.
I agree.
Loss.
Oregon State.
Loss, but close. Where's the Oregon State game?
In Colorado.
I mean, it doesn't matter. They won't stop DJ.
Yeah.
Win.
DJ stops himself sometimes. So
I'm gonna go win.
I'll go loss.
I'm going loss.
Arizona in Boulder.
Easy win.
Arizona can score. That game's interesting. See, because I'll go loss Arizona State, and I think they beat Arizona at home.
I think they beat Arizona. I think that's their 6th win. Here's the problem. I think they lose versus at Washington State, and I think they
win that game.
And I think they lose at Utah. That leaves them at six wins.
And what is 6? The push?
No, 6.5 is the.
Unless they beat Oregon State.
Correct. If they beat Oregon State, he gets 6. But if they beat Oregon State, they're winning 7, in my opinion.
Facts.
Like I said, I think it's like
I think the Oregon State game is the determining factor.
It sounds like you think that the Arizona State game is the determining factor, because if they win that game, then
no, I have them winning Arizona State, I have them winning Stanford, and I have them winning Arizona. I have them winning all 3 of them. Okay. So I have them at 6 wins at this point.
I don't think they win all 3 of those. But definitely going to beat Stanford. Stanford's terrible. I just think they lose.
Let's just say they don't win all of those and they lose one of them. Let's just say they lose to at Arizona or at Arizona State. They lose one of them. Then I think they'll upset one of the 4 teams that they're expected to lose to at UCLA, Oregon State, Washington State, or Utah. I think they win 6 games at this point. That's where my head's at.
I think if they get to 6 and they get bowl eligible, I think it's a success for him in year 1.
Is 6 bowl eligible? I thought 7 was.
No, 6.
So, all right, does that count for a 7th win?
Absolutely.
Okay, I don't know. I didn't think it would. It's not a regular season win.
Like it still goes towards the win total.
Would that go towards the over/under on the win total?
Absolutely.
No.
It counts towards their schedule.
It does, but you didn't say that at the beginning of the bet.
No. First of all, I'm fine if it does. What my question would be is if I bet Colorado over/under and it was 6.5.
Yes.
Would the bowl game count towards their win total?
Yes.
I don't know if it does.
Can we get a clarification on that? You're 100% sure, Cottrell?
I'm not 100% sure. I'm about 90% sure.
I need a clarification on that.
They put it on, like, if in the playoff, like if you talk about like NFL, it's not going to be like, oh, the Eagles went, 15 and 4 or whatever, those numbers are. In college, they count it on their schedule. Like if you look up what their record was, you're going to see that.
Mark Elmore says it counts. If it counts, it counts.
It's going to count on what they show, like in their record books. I
want to know if it counts for the over/under because that's what we're betting.
Because like Michigan's was 9.5, and it was like for the season, and it was like overwhelmingly like over. So like that wouldn't include the Big Ten championship game or a possible bowl game. Like that was counting regular season if you bet it like that. Because
I got deferring things in here. I need a ruling. If I get a rule, and by the way, Cottrell, let me be clear. I'm okay if Colorado wins 7 games. I will not mind taking a trip out to Ohio. I'm going to deliver you a cheesesteak. We'll hang out for a couple of days, and I'll drive back. I'm good with it. But I want to know. I want to have an honest bet.
I think they won 7 regular season games, and for the record, I'm honest guy. I was 100% just on board with it just being regular season, so I'm okay even if that is just the bet. I'm just saying for college football totals, they definitely count towards overall record.
You keep saying definitely, but then you don't say 100%.
No, he's not wrong in regards to like say if Michigan goes, like if you look at Michigan's schedule from last year, it'll say like 14-1 or whatever they were. Like they played 12 Big Ten games, Big Ten championship game, and then lost to TCU. So it'll say 13-1. That's what it'll say in the record books. All teams do that. In regards to betting, I don't think it's that way. Like if you bet over under at the beginning of the year before the season starts, you're betting regular season totals. In my opinion, that's what I think it is. Like I said,
it probably does say that for betting, yeah.
Because Michigan's was 9.5, and the over was like -600 because they could have got to 10.
Bro, if they get to 6 and they have a bowl game, let me see who they get matched up with the bowl game, and I'll still let her play. Like if you're matched up, it's Colorado versus I don't know, like a fun one, like Colorado versus
Kansas.
Yeah, I don't know.
Colorado
versus Florida. Give me Graham Mertz.
They won't see.
I wouldn't bet a quarter on Graham Mertz.
No, neither would I.
It's going to be interesting because for a 6-win team, like there will probably be a somewhat of a battle to get them in a bowl game.
100%.
They're gonna play a 9-win team.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I agree. I agree. 100%.
It'll depend on what happens with the rest of the Big 12. Because you got to figure if Texas makes the playoff, Oklahoma's probably going to be in a New Year's Eve 6 day, which is going to kick, depending on where they finish record-wise. I mean, if they finish 4th or 5th in the Big 12, or in the Pac-12, sorry, so it won't even matter. No, they're not going to play a 9-win team. They're 100% not going to play a 9-win team. They're going to be the 5th or 6th choice out of the Pac-12. They're not going to play a 9-win team.
Shally, you got to also realize, though, that, teams can decline playing in certain games. I think there's going to be, like the Bahamas Bowl or something like that. Like there's going to be a good bowl game that picks up Colorado. And for some of those, other 6-win teams, they're probably just going to be like, nah, we're good. We don't want to travel, play Colorado in that game.
Bahamas Bowl will be a waste for Colorado.
Agreed. But all right, let's move on to the next game, guys. We're at 8:40, kind of running up against it.
So next game, we'll move over to the SEC. Go LSU versus Ole Miss at Ole Miss.
I like LSU in this one. Ole Miss showed me exactly who they were last week. I told you they were still cowards. I told you they were going to piss down their leg when they played Alabama, and that's exactly what Jackson Dart did. Give me LSU. I think LSU dominates them. I don't care what the spread is. I think LSU beats them by 20.
I don't think LSU is going to win by 20, but I do agree with what Gene said. I think Ole Miss had every chance to kind of really say this is who we are, and we are good, and we kind of got underrated at the beginning of the year, and they sat there and laid a dud. They had every opportunity in the world to win that football game on Saturday, and they couldn't get it done. Jackson Dart looked very pedestrian against a good defense. I think LSU takes care of business. Definitely not going to take LSU by 20, but I think LSU goes in there and wins the football game.
I will say the one thing that I will give, Ole Miss doesn't get credit for it. Jalen Milroe looked better in that game than I've ever seen him look so far in his collegiate career in games against, other Power 5 schools. Now, with that said, I am still picking LSU to win this one. I do think that LSU will take care of business offensively, and they're going to make Jackson Dart uncomfortable. I thought Ole Miss was going to win last week, and they showed me exactly who they were. So I'm not going to go back to that well this week. I think LSU is in a good spot, and they're actually playing really good football at this point. So Brian Kelly will have those guys ready to go. I think they go into Ole Miss. They take care of business. And, as good of a team that as Ole Miss normally puts out 8, 9, 10 caliber wins, that's not a hard place to necessarily go play. So I think LSU takes care of business on the road.
Dude, Malik Neighbors looks like one of the best receivers in the country.
He does, 100%.
Very good. Very good.
100%. Now the primetime game, 7:30 game. Got the Notre Dame Fighting Irish traveling to Duke, take on those Blue Devils.
I have a really strong opinion on this game. I almost picked it. You're going to find out how good of a coach Notre Dame has this week, because they're eliminated. Notre Dame's eliminated. They can't win. They can't go to college football playoff. They're eliminated. I'm telling you, they're eliminated because too many things would have to happen for Notre Dame to make a college football playoff after losing a home game to Ohio State. So, like, you guys are saying no, they're not. I understand what you're saying. Let me explain to you what I mean. Are you putting them in a college football playoff over a one-loss Ohio State team?
No.
Can't.
Are you putting them in a college football playoff over a Big Ten champion Penn State team or Michigan team?
No.
Okay.
No.
So are you putting them in the playoffs over a one-loss Georgia team?
Who's their loss to?
Doesn't matter. They won 2 straight national championships, and they're in the SEC. Even if they lose and they win the SEC, they're in the college football playoff. I just went nuts and said one-loss Georgia team. It doesn't matter.
It does matter because this is why Contrell's asking, because do they lose in the SEC championship?
No, they're one-loss SEC champion, George.
So they don't make the championship game.
They don't. One-loss SEC championship.
Oh,
no.
Okay. Do you put them in over a one-loss Big 12 champion Texas?
No.
So do you put them in over a one-loss Oregon or a one-loss
conference champion? It doesn't matter.
But that's my point.
Like, yes, Gene. Your next question, yes, because they have the opportunity to beat USC. So the next question could potentially be a yes, and I think that's why they're still alive at this point. USC is a team that has the potential to knock out a lot of teams that are sitting ahead of Oregon at this point. That are sitting ahead of Notre Dame at this point. They can play Oregon. They play. They're going to be able to play the other Washington.
They better be the biggest Ohio State fans they can ever run into. They need Ohio State to run the table, win the Big Ten, and they need to handle their business, because they can make the argument we only lost to the number 1 team in the country who won the Big Ten. That's their only argument. But the problem is when you're a conference champion, even if like Oregon is a one-loss conference champion and they beat USC and Notre Dame beats USC, they're not getting in over an Oregon. So it's like
in that scenario, no,
they're not. They're not getting in over any one-loss conference champion. They're not.
Well, the only one they can get in is the one-loss USC. They can get over if they beat USC and it's their only loss. Yes, they can.
They could.
They already have a loss.
Agree. They lost to Ohio, but if Ohio State's undefeated in the playoff,
that means if USC only has one loss and they're a Pac-12 conference champion, that means they beat Oregon. They beat some combination of Oregon, Oregon State, Washington, and Utah.
Yeah.
And they're a conference champion. They are 100% in over Notre Dame. It's not even close. There's
but Notre Dame beats them heads up, and they're only undefeated
conference champion. Okay, so you go head-to-head conference champion strength of schedule. The Pac-12 has like 7 ranked teams right now. They're all going to play each other. If you go through that gauntlet and only lose one game, and the game
but Notre Dame's going to play game. Doesn't Notre Dame play Clemson too? Notre Dame's going to play.
Clemson's 2-2.
No, I understand, but Notre Dame's going to play Duke, Clemson, Ohio State, USC. They don't have a cakewalk schedule.
I'm not saying it's a cakewalk schedule, but they have no shot. This is Notre Dame's problem. They decided they wanted to stay independent.
I agree.
They wanted to take their NBC money rather than joining the Big Ten or somewhere else.
That's why I said they're out.
I agree. I'm agreeing with you. Unless a conference champion ends up with 2 losses, if you give Georgia and then either Michigan, Ohio State, or Penn State as a one-loss Big Ten champion,
Texas,
a one-loss Texas champion. If that Pac-12 champion doesn't have 2 losses, Notre Dame is out. Final, done, over with. It's a non-starter.
I think Ohio State, as a one-loss non-Big Ten champion, would still be in over Notre Dame.
Correct.
Yeah, they got that.
So that's why I said too many things need to happen. So in my opinion, I think Duke beats an exhaling Notre Dame team this week in Duke. Duke is so underrated. They're a lot better team than people give them credit for.
I'm picking it, so I'll go over it when I pick it. But
okay,
I got Notre Dame winning this one. I do think Duke is a good football team, but I also believe that Marcus Freeman is. I do think that he's a good head coach. I think he's going to have that team ready to go, and it sucks that what happened in that. Well, for them, it sucks. For me, I was very happy to see it. But putting 10 players out there on the field and just not just not telling your players to take the penalty there. I know his big thing was you don't want to give up a free play. You can jump off sides and the ball's going to move up half an inch and it's already on, the half-inch line. So it's not like it would have made a big difference there. So I think you got to take the penalty there and get 11 guys on the field because they went exactly where that one defensive lineman was missing. And, that could have been the difference between Notre Dame getting a win and being, top 5 in the polls or being a one-loss team that's, pretty much out of contention at this point. So it sucks that he's going to get, he's going to have to hold that. But I do think that he will have that Notre Dame team ready to go. And I think they win that game against Duke.
Here's what they need to rely on. They have to stay, and I say this, they have to stay in touch. And if they can do that, everybody knows Notre Dame gets more love than they should, especially in the polls every year. Beating Duke this week would be a big first step. You have to hope for chaos. I mean, again, the number one thing they have to hope for is that Ohio State runs the table. If Ohio State runs the table and gets into the college football playoffs, the undefeated Big Ten, that helps them.
Yep.
All these other teams, you have to hope the Pac-12 just starts eating itself, which it could.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the odds of somebody going through the Pac-12 undefeated is slim and none. I just think there's too many good teams.
I agree.
I think you have to hope for chaos. You actually probably have to hope for Georgia to hold serve because I think Georgia would have to completely collapse for them not to make it, and then you don't want to be compared with Georgia.
And that's my point.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with you, dude.
This is like crazy though. Georgia holding serve is not crazy.
This is like I'm saying they want Georgia to hold serve because I think everybody agrees Georgia's in. That eliminates like a bunch of like any other SEC team having a shot.
Yeah.
So it eliminates the SEC. That's what it does. Ohio State running the table eliminates anybody else from the Big Ten probably from getting in. Because if Notre Dame does run the table, their resume is going to hold up better than Michigan or Penn State's.
I agree.
Yep.
But this is like a 10-leg touchdown parlay. That's what this is. Like that. That's
my point. That's my point.
That's what they need to happen. They might click off 5 or 6 legs of it. They're not getting all 10.
I will say, we saw almost identically, the exact same thing happened last year. Ohio State needed this to go right, that to go right, this to go right to make the playoff. It's not quite as many as what Notre Dame does. I'm not saying that we were down to 13 or anything like that, but there was stuff that needed to happen. And I think the things that need to happen ahead of Notre Dame, very possible. Alabama already has one loss at this point. LSU has one loss. If Georgia goes into the SEC championship game, beats one of them, both those teams are eliminated. You don't have to think about them. Afterthought, foregone conclusion. Ohio State, obviously, you want to root for them to run the table. Let's just say, hypothetically, that does happen. Then that's another team. They're in the playoff. I would imagine at this point, Texas, their only, real competition left is beating Oklahoma team. They have to beat them in the regular season. And then, if they go Big 12 championship game, they would have to beat them there. But then that last 4th spot, I think, could potentially be up for grabs. Now, Florida State is a team in the ACC right now. They're undefeated.
No, we didn't mention them.
The way they've looked so far, though, I wouldn't be surprised if they tripped up, somewhere along the way, or even if it's a rematch against Clemson in the ACC championship game, or they'd have to beat Duke twice. So I just think there's ways for Notre Dame to get back in that aren't crazy far-fetched. Yes,
Texas is undefeated after October 7th. They will not lose a game this year. They're going to play at Houston, BYU, Kansas State, in Texas.
So those are, I think, at that point, again, this is contingent on Georgia and Ohio State running the table. Those are going to be 3 teams that are undefeated there, and that last 4 spots up for grabs. The Pac-12 eating each other, we see it every single year. So I don't think it's crazy for that to happen. And in the ACC this year, Duke's a good team. Clemson's not good, but they gave Florida State all they could handle. And Florida State's going to have to beat one of those 2 teams again for the ACC championship game. So I'm just not saying that Notre Dame's out of it yet. Is it far-fetched? Yes, but there's definitely still a path for them to get back.
They're sitting at like 7% right now.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I'm just giving you my opinion. I'm going Duke in this one. I think Duke wins the game outright. I think that Riley Leonard is just too good, and he finds a way. And the biggest thing I have to keep reminding people of, and it reminded me of it when I watched him play against Clemson, they returned 17 starters out of 22 on offense and defense. Duke is a veteran team. They are playing good football. I like Duke in this one. I really do. I just think it's an exhale game for Notre Dame. I feel like that their kids, it's going to be tough to get them up to be like, you still have a chance. You could still make it. Like, I think Duke's riding high, and I think that Notre Dame loses this one.
Well, then that would get interesting because
who are you picking, Cottrell?
I got Notre Dame. I got Notre Dame to win. I think, but if Duke does win this game, it gets real interesting because then there's a good chance they could find a way to beat Florida State. Duke Blue Devils might be your fourth team in the college football playoff.
That'd be wild, wouldn't it?
Be nuts.
Be great. Be awesome to watch.
It'd be different.
I mean, at that point, like, let's say Oregon or USC, and I don't want to go, too deep. We're still early in the season. One of those teams in the Pac-12 runs their table. You'd have 5. It's not going to happen, but you'd have 5 undefeated conference champions. Could you imagine the chaos that would?
I don't agree with that actually this year.
I don't agree with that either.
I don't.
Talking about Jeff Perrone's comment, he said Notre Dame overrated again for the millionth year in a row. I don't agree. I think they're very good.
I think they're very good. I
just think that this is a really bad game for them. It's a game after a loss, and it's a game you got to go play at Duke. It's a terrible place to play right now. But is there any more preview games?
That's it.
Okay, let's get into pick 'em. Because we got MLB, we got Ryder Cup. We're at 8:54. We kind of got to move.
Shally is dominating both.
Bro, I'm doing all right. I'm doing all right with this. Shally, what's the standings? What's the order you want to go this week?
I'll go first. I'll let Gene go in the middle, and I'll let my college compatriot here clean it up at the end.
Can we be honest? We're all killing it in Superdog.
Yes.
Okay, just check.
No, it's funny because somebody asked me the other day, and I was like, honestly, not to sound stupid, I was like, but the fact that all of us have hit multiple super dogs 4 weeks into the season is kind of crazy.
All right, well, let's get into it. You're going first, so let us know how it works.
I'll go first. I'm going all over the board this week. I got some small conference stuff. I was out looking everywhere for winners this week, so I'm going to start with this one. I'm going to start with Iowa State at Oklahoma. You know what Iowa State is? They struggle to score the ball, and that is an understatement. I think at Oklahoma, Dylan Gabriel and that team is they're kind of hitting on all cylinders right now. They're putting up points. Defense is starting to come along under Brett Venables. 19.5 is a big number, but in Norman, I like Oklahoma big. I think Iowa State's going to struggle to put up any kind of points in this game consistently to keep pace with that Oklahoma offense. So I'll take Oklahoma minus 19.5. Second game, this one's for Cottrell. I'm going to the MAC. I'm going Northern Illinois at Toledo. Toledo minus 13.5, taking Toledo. Offense is high powered. Deegan Rice back healthy. He's kind of throwing the ball to the other team a little bit too much for my liking, but they got in a dogfight with Western Michigan last week, and out of nowhere just put up 21 points in like 4 minutes. At home on the turf, they run the ball well. They throw the ball well. Give me Toledo at home minus 13.5. Third game, taking Notre Dame minus 5.5 at Duke. I think this is their season. Coming off a tough, demoralizing loss against Ohio State is tough. I do think Marcus Freeman's a very good coach. I think Sam Hartman, they have a lot of senior leadership on that team. Going to Duke. I think Duke's a very good team. Don't get me wrong. I'm not downplaying Duke. I think they caught Clemson at the best time, the first week of the year. You've seen kind of what Clemson has been since then. Clemson's a little bit overrated this year. I think it's a very good game. Minus 5.5. I'll take them. I'll lay it. I think Notre Dame bounces back. Their season's on the line. I like Hartman and company to get it done in Duke. For my super dog, mentioned it earlier, Gene kind of hit this right on the head for me. Said everything I wanted to say. I don't think Colorado wins the game, but I think after getting embarrassed at Oregon, I think they come home in Boulder. I think they play better. They play better. Excuse me. I think they put up more points, and I also think I don't. Again, USC's defense still is not anywhere close to what it needs to be. This isn't going to be the Oregon buzzsaw they played last week. They're going to be able to move the ball at home against USC. I like them to keep it close, maybe lose by 2 touchdowns, but I'll take the 20. What is it? 20. I'll take 21.5. 21.5. I'll take Colorado as my super dog this week.
Okay, well, I get to go now. I'm ready. I'm finally going to the well. I'm going to call this my squarest week. This is the squarest week you're ever going to catch me on. By the way, the only reason I was 1-2 last week is because the Michigan spread moved from 23.5, which I would have covered, to 24.5, which I didn't cover. I had them at 23.5, but it moved to 24.5, so I took the L there. Just to be clear. But it was 23.5. I had them at 24, but whatever. Give me Georgia minus 14.5 at Auburn. I think Georgia coming into a serious conference play, SEC conference play, I think they show up. I think you start seeing the real Georgia this week. I think they absolutely trounce Auburn. I don't think this game's close. I think Georgia beats them by 30. I think they impose their will. I love Georgia this week at Auburn. Easy win. I'm going back to the well. They're 0-4 against the spread, but they're 4-0 on paper. Give me Michigan minus 17 over Nebraska. Nebraska stinks. They don't have a quarterback. Michigan's going to score 17 points on the defensive side of the ball. Give me Michigan minus 17 over a bad Nebraska team. This is an easy one. Thank you for losing to Penn State by 1,000,000 points so I can get this spread down to where it's at. Give me Iowa at home, minus 12.5 versus Sparty. Sparty is falling apart at the seams. They got beat by 20 by Maryland. They got beat by 30 by Washington. And now they're going to go play at Iowa after that team got beat the crap out of in Penn State. Give me Iowa minus 12.5. Iowa's going to destroy them this week. I'll take Iowa minus the points. And for my super dog, give me Northwestern plus 27 versus Penn State. Listen, Drew Aller has showed you in 2 road games this year that he's not look as good as he does in Happy Valley. Northwestern keeps that game close. Penn State's offense looks anemic for 3 quarters. Penn State wins the football game by 15, and I pick up 12 Superdog points. I'll take Northwestern plus the 27 over Penn State.
It's actually hilarious that you say that because I was going back and forth with if I wanted to make that my super dog or not. So it's funny that's where you were at. But my picks of the week, first game, I like Texas A&M minus 6 at Arkansas. Now I know a lot of you are probably thinking, didn't Texas A&M just lose their starting quarterback Connor Wegman for the rest of the season? They 100% did. I don't know if you've seen Arkansas play football this year or not, but they absolutely stink. I don't care if Wegman was out there. They got Max Johnson going out there. At this point, you could throw Milroe. You could throw anybody at quarterback. And I think Texas A&M can beat Arkansas by more than 6 points. So I think, if Wegman's out there, I think this is potentially a 12.5, 13-point spread. I think that's how bad Arkansas is. And I think Texas A&M, they go in Arkansas. They take care of business in that one. So that's my first game. Second game, I'm also going to the Michigan at Nebraska game, not taking the spread, taking the over 39.5. I think that spread's a little bit low. I get it. Michigan has struggled, at times offensively, but at the same time, I think this is the game where they can put all those pieces together. I think they're going to be able to run the football all over that Nebraska defense. And I think JJ is going to look good at Nebraska. I think there's a chance that Michigan scores 40 points by themselves, let alone, with those two teams together. So I do think that game goes, well over that 39.5 number. The other thing to kind of add in that game is that Michigan, their defense has looked great, but it seems like every week at this point, they give up just one big play. And I think that's even more push to get that number over that 39.5. So love that play there. Last game, Joseph Jeffers, you're not going to like this one. I like South Carolina plus 12.5 at Rocky Top going up against Tennessee. Now, look, I 100% understand it being a blackout game. Tennessee at this point, their season is really on the ropes here. They already got a loss to Florida that no one was expecting them to have. And against South Carolina, you lose this game, your season is quite literally over. But I think South Carolina, they got Spencer Rattler. He's a gamer. He's not afraid to go out on the road and play good football. I think South Carolina finds a way to keep that game close. I do think Tennessee pulls out the win, but I think Spencer Rattler will have, Tennessee potentially on a upset alert. So I like South Carolina covering that 12.5 there. And then my super dog, I was in between both of your guys' picks with Northwestern and Colorado. I got to go back with Colorado. I think they bounce back. I think, 21.5 is a lot. They're going to be at home in that one. And Shedeur had a bad game last week. I think he's going to bounce back, put up some points on the board. Don't think they win, but I think this is a situation where I could pick up some super dog points. So I'm going with Colorado plus 21.5.
So Joseph Jeffers says he likes that bet himself. I got news for you. I like Tennessee in that game, and I think Tennessee stomps South Carolina. That's a revenge game from last year. It's the Hendon Hooker game. I'm telling you right now, Tennessee, that blackout game, I think Tennessee jumps on them early, and I really like Tennessee in that one. It's the only pick I disagree with you on. I want to ask you guys,
Hooker was playing, I'd be with you.
I get you. I want to ask you a fun question, okay? So I look at this every week, and I think it's really interesting, and I think it says a lot. What do you think the most expensive ticket in the house? All right, so let me do it this way. Tickets start as low as on ESPN. I look at this every week. Who has the most expensive, lowest ticket in the house this week?
Wait, what?
So
like the most expensive ticket, but the worst ticket in the stadium.
So yes, correct. The most expensive, lowest ticket.
Okay, so the most expensive shit ticket.
Correct. So it's the lowest ticket start at, and it's the highest number.
Might be Nebraska.
You think it's Nebraska?
I don't think so. I think it's looking through the slate.
It starts low as $31 for Nebraska.
Man, ain't that then?
I think it's going to be, let's see,
Colorado?
Kansas at Texas.
Texas. I'll answer Charles first, and then I'll go right to Charlie.
I mean, I think it's Colorado too, but if it's not
Texas
Colorado,
stars low as $25 for Kansas at Texas.
Oh.
For USC at Colorado, tickets start as low as $182. The second to that is Tennessee. South Carolina at Tennessee. Ticket stars low as $167. Those are the two big ticket items this weekend to go watch play football. Just like
yeah, Caleb Williams traveling to the house that Dion is building. I mean, I think that makes
Dion effect, man. The amount of money that Colorado's bringing in, that was the greatest hire that Colorado ever could make.
Shame when
I won't feel that way in 6 years when he abandons the program and they fall apart. But right now, all right, let's get into MLB. Shall we start us off? Let us know what we're talking about MLB. I know we're talking about playoffs, and I will be right back.
No, we were just doing. There's pretty much two playoff spots up for grabs in both leagues. You look at it, you got the NL, you got the Braves, Dodgers, Milwaukee, and Philadelphia locked in. You got Arizona, Chicago currently sitting in the spots. I'm not sure what they did today. And you got the Marlins and the Reds, all within a game and a half. AL, you got Baltimore, Texas, Minnesota, Tampa Bay locked in. Tampa Bay can still catch Baltimore for the 1 seed, so that's interesting. You got Toronto and Houston in the spots right now with Seattle only a half game back. Who do you think ends up with both final spots? Got like 4 games to go. Well, what's today? Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So you got 4 games to go.
For me, I think the AL holds, they stand pat. I think those are your playoff teams, the teams that are in those positions. On the NL side, though, I am rolling with the Cincinnati Reds to find a way, get into the playoffs. And, we everybody wants to see Ellie De La Cruz in the playoffs, but I also want to see Hunter Green as the ace of a staff. I think if he gets into a situation where, I think he could win you a game that you're not necessarily expected to win. So I want to see the Reds get that last spot. I think they're going to do it.
I think it's really good. I just think it's really interesting that either Houston or Seattle, one of those teams is not going to make the playoffs. That's absurd to me, right? Like I'm so perplexed that that's how that's going to end up.
Texas looked like they were.
Texas went on a run, man. They looked really good.
They looked dead in the water for a hot second.
They did for a solid week. For a solid week, it looked like they were just going to fall apart, and they went on a run. And now Houston's in a slump. And the crazy, Houston's playing Seattle, I think tonight and tomorrow. So they got Framber on the mound tonight, who's been awful the last 4 or 5 starts. So it's gonna be interesting. Seattle wins tonight; they'll be in, and Houston will be out. So it'll be that's probably gonna come down to Sunday, which will be fun.
I mean, the other thing though with Seattle is that they were, the hottest team in baseball for a while, and then they went on that 4-game skid, and now they're on the outside looking in.
I actually think that the NL playoffs stay identical to what they are right now: Philadelphia, Arizona, Chicago. I think the AL playoffs stay identical to what they are right now. Obviously Tampa, but Toronto and Houston. I hate to say it. I would love to be wrong about this. I would love for Seattle to beat out Houston. I hate the Houston Astros.
I think the one thing I'd want to say, I love that Baltimore and Tampa Bay both pretty much held serve all year. And you got to give Tampa Bay credit too. I mean, they're still within 2 games. They theoretically could still win the division, which is nuts when you consider they lost their best pitcher, who was probably going to win the Cy Young. It was like 9-1 when he got hurt. Then lost their best player because he's a diddler, and then on top of that, now they just lost Brandon Lowe, who was one of their best hitters for most likely what's going to be, the rest of the season, the playoffs. And they're still there. They're still going to win probably somewhere around close to 100 games. And then Baltimore, man. I know we were joking about earlier about giving Cottrell his flowers, but next week it'll be official. We can give Gene all his flowers for picking Baltimore to win the division. And that is going to be to watch Camden Yards be rocking next week is well, actually, no, they're going to have a bye, so they won't play till the following weekend. But to see that ballpark completely full for a nighttime playoff game is going to be awesome. Those fans have waited for a long time for that team to get back to where they are now. And I'll tell you what, man, if I've seen a lot of the Yankees comments here, you guys better get your shit together, because Toronto, is still relatively young with that core. Baltimore's core they're all 23 years old, and they still have the best prospect in baseball coming next year in Holiday. So that team goes out and spends some money on pitching. They are going to run the AL East for the next 5 or 6 years, and the Yankees are going to be a very distant 3rd or 4th afterthought, which is going to be refreshing.
To me, it's wild to think about the AL playoffs. Like, who's your clear-cut favorite to win it? Because, no one – listen, as much as I picked Baltimore to be there, I thought they'd have to make a big move to go to the World Series. I don't know if they can. The Rays have lost, every player on their roster. The NL Central's a friggin' joke. The Texas Rangers, with what pitching? What are we talking about? Do you think they're going to win playoff series? I think we still see Houston again. I still think Houston makes it out of the AL, even from the wild card. I do.
I actually agree with you.
If Houston makes it with their lineup, and then you figure the 1-2 punch of Verlander and Framber, they'd have to be the favorites. But like I said, Framber's been terrible. My concern with Baltimore has always been pitching. I don't know if you're telling me they're getting to the World Series with Kyle Gibson being their one, and they're young. I mean, you hate to say it, but they're gonna be smack dab in the middle of a division series with a bunch of kids that have never played a playoff game before, and that's not the most easy thing in the world. Tampa Bay just keeps grinding, but again, I think eventually they have to run out of bullets. And Minnesota's tricky at the beginning because they have the pitching. They have enough in a 1-2 pitching combo to make it interesting if they hit. I don't see them winning 2 back-to-back 7-game series, though, because they just don't have enough for that. I think the AL is wide open. I mean, I think you have a lot of people pulling for Baltimore. They're going to be the sentimental favorite. Again, everybody, like Gene said, everybody hates Houston. If you're not a Houston fan, everybody else hates Houston. But I think with their experience and their lineup and their pitching, they would have to be the favorite to come out.
Oh, well.
And then the NL, I think the NL is just going to be. I think the NL is going to be a bloodbath.
So how does it line up? When would Philadelphia play Atlanta? Round 2?
It would depend on what happened.
Well, why? because Philadelphia's the first wild card and Atlanta's the 1 seed. Make it make sense to me.
If either one of the wild cards beat Milwaukee, they would get Atlanta.
Okay.
And then we
No,
would
I want Atlanta in the 5-game series and not the 7-game series.
I don't.
I do.
Because you're only going to get Wheeler and Nola once then.
I feel like you can beat Atlanta 3 times in 5 games a lot easier than you can beat them 4 and 7.
I mean, I think if you have the opportunity to go Wheeler Nola, that's 2 games that you're gonna if they bring their A stuff, those 2 games you're gonna have the opportunity to win. And at that point, you put that Atlanta team down 2-0. Could they reel off 3 in a row? Absolutely.
Philadelphia Phillies are not winning.
They're not going to do that.
The first 2 games in Atlanta.
Yeah, dude, you're going against Max Fried and Strider. So as much as
I'm just saying those are going to be 2. You have a chance to win
3
2 games.
Ranger Suarez is what you bank on. Game 3 Ranger coming through. I think Ranger Suarez in game 3. I think you need to split in Atlanta with Wheeler Nola, and I think game 3 Ranger Suarez needs to be a big win. And then you have an opportunity to knock them off. You have 2 games to knock them off once.
I saw how the staff pitch, and I get it. You know, Atlanta is the clear-cut best team in baseball at the moment. I saw the way Philadelphia pitched in the playoffs last year. They're going to be ready for the moment. You know, even in that wild card spot, I get it, in Atlanta as well. If Nola and Wheeler bring your A stuff, those are 2 games that you 100% have a chance to still win.
Agreed.
Even though it's Atlanta and their roster is insane.
Dude, Atlanta is so ridiculous. Like Bryce Elder is going to be their 3rd starter.
That's why it's tough. It's I would rather them have to come back here for 3 games versus 2. But listen, I mean, they're very familiar with each other. They've both gone on spurts this year where they've beat each other 2 or 3 in a row. The pitchers are very familiar with the hitters on each side. I'll take our atmosphere all day over what fake ass Braves fans are going to be that don't show up.
You need either Wheeler or Nola to throw a gem and get back to Philadelphia 1-1. They get back to Philadelphia 1-1. I really think that Atlanta has a chance to not get back to Atlanta in a 5-game series. In a 7, and by the way, Jeff said the winner of 1 plays the winner of 4-5, no matter what the situation is.
I think they reseed. I'll have to look at it.
He said 1 plays the winner of 4-5, 2 plays 3-6. And Jeff is like an almanac in baseball. He's been waiting for us to talk baseball forever. I don't know. Even though the Phillies don't have a good record versus all this year, almost every game was a coin flip. I agree.
They do not reseed for the MLB playoffs.
Nah, they don't. I just Googled it.
So
we'll get Atlanta in the 2nd round.
And I love that. That's what I want. I want them in 5. I don't think they have a shot at beating them in 7.
The only problem you have at that point is then you have, if somehow we go down 0-2, you're coming back here with nothing.
You go down 0-2, Wheeler Nola, you're not winning the series. I don't care where the game is being played. So if you go here's the thing, right? This is the way I see Philadelphia beating Atlanta. If you get out of Atlanta 1-1 with Wheeler Nola, and then you have Ranger win game 3, you put Atlanta's back against the wall. Philadelphia gets the elimination game in Philadelphia. The pressure's on them again. You got to beat them 3-1. I don't think you're beating them 3-2.
Well, you'd have Wheeler for game 5 on normal rest.
I understand that. I just think asking him to win 2 games in Atlanta, unless he throws the dud and Aaron Nola wins game 2, which I don't think is happening. I think Aaron Nola stinks, but whatever. I would throw Aaron Nola game 2 in Atlanta. If the Phillies won game 1 in Atlanta, I would throw Aaron Nola game 2 and expect to lose. Because if you hold him for game 3, he's going to blow the lead. That's what he does.
See, I would probably throw Ranger game 2 and let Nola pitch game 3 and just be like, the problem with Nola is they leave him in too long. They have to be able to pull the trigger with him. Like if when he gets into that 6th inning area and then he starts getting guys on base or something, they can't be like, well, let's see if he works out of it. You just got to get out of the game. Come get him out of the game. And that's what Rob has not done enough this year.
I get it. I'm interested to see how the MLB playoffs play out this year. We'll obviously talk about it a lot more next week because we'll be getting into the series.
They start. We just wanted to touch base on it tonight because they start Tuesday. So everybody will be in game 2 by the time we come on air. I will say whoever wins the Phillies Braves series, that's who's going to the World Series.
I think LA gets knocked out early.
They might. Their pitching sucks.
It's terrible.
There's nothing in that pitching staff to have any kind of faith that they're beating the Phillies or the Braves in a 7-game series.
I completely agree with you. We want to give Ryder Cup picks? Is that what we're doing next?
I guess that's all we got left.
All right, let's give Ryder Cup picks. I'm going America. I don't care if they don't win in European soil. I'm going the USA.
Yeah, I mean, they haven't won on European soil since 1993. Granted, they don't play this every year. They play it every other year, but it's still a long-ass time. It's going to be interesting. Be a great atmosphere. If you look at it on paper, the U.S. should definitely win. It's not how these things always play out, obviously.
Of course not.
I'm going with Gene as well. I think the U.S. retains the cup. I think they win 14.5 to 13.5. I think it comes down to the very probably last 2 matches on Sunday, the singles matches. I think it's gonna be really great. I think it's gonna be great. I think it's gonna be one of the better Ryder Cups in a long time.
I'm gonna give you a surprise golfer to look out for in the United States team.
Do it.
I think, and I just my opinion, I think Colin Morikawa has an incredible weekend. I think that's the guy to look out in the United States team.
Well, I'm not going to be Judas and pick Europe, so I got the US winning this one as well. Bill, I did want to ask you a question though about it. As far as how they went about picking the US roster, were you cool with how everything went down? Like, I know a lot of people were like, Ricky Fowler being on the team, like, it's he got his boys on the team. Like, are you cool with how everything went down?
Yes and no. So with the whole, I'm going to try to keep this as short as possible. With the whole break between Live and PGA kind of screwed up, because you get Ryder Cup points for playing on the PGA Tour. So Brooks played so well in the majors. He won one, came in second in the Masters, came in like 5th at the other one. Like, he was going to be on the team no matter what. He gained enough points from just playing in the majors. I think there's an argument to be made the way DeChambeau finished the season and him being on the last Ryder Cup team. The way this course is kind of laid out, I think, and I'm not a Bryson guy at all, but I think the way that course is laid out, I think he could have absolutely demoralized guys on that course if he hit the ball straight. I think you can make an argument for him being over. I think the hot topic was if Justin Thomas should have made the team or not. His form was terrible. He played awful all year. Is he a good enough golfer to go there and flip a switch and play better? Yeah, he is. Absolutely. He's one of the best players in the world. The problem you have with him is he's always paired with Jordan Spieth. If he goes out and lays a dud early Friday morning, I don't know how you can come back with him. And now you have Justin Thomas that has to sit around and stew all weekend. Overall, I like the team. I think Ricky should have made the team. That was the guy you mentioned. I think the way he played to close out the season, he was in good form. I think he had, I have no problem with Ricky being on the team. I think Justin Thomas is kind of the polarizing guy to a lot of fans. I think if he goes out and plays well, I don't think it's an issue. If he doesn't, there'll be a lot of second guessing. But I mean, you got Scotty Scheffler, Brooks, those guys up top that are just, for lack of a better term, pretty much better than everybody on the other team, minus 1 or 2 people. They just got to play well. It's gonna be an intimidating atmosphere. If you've never watched a Ryder Cup and you don't like golf, I would encourage you to watch it because it's insanity. It's like putting a soccer crowd at a golf course. That's what it is. It's great. Playing on a course none of these guys really ever played before, so it's new to both teams. They've both been over there for like a week now, though, playing. But should be a good competition. But I like the USA team. I do. I think if Justin's obviously playing how Justin Thomas should play, then I love Justin Thomas being on the team. He's one of the captains, and he's kind of one of the the room leaders there. So if not, but I mean, other than that, I have no problems with the captain's pick at all. To answer your question,
Let's get into You Got to Be Kidding Me, Cottrell.
So, my You Got to Be Kidding Me this week hits a little bit closer to home. So, in the Cleveland Browns game against the Tennessee Titans, Amari Cooper caught a pass up the sideline. He's about 2 feet away from the sideline. Catches the ball, running. He's one-on-one with the safety, has them all turned around. He stops. He looks back, wonders what's going on. The ref blew a whistle. Ref said that Amari Cooper had stepped out of bounds during that play, and that that he was down at that point. They went back and looked at the replay, trying to figure out ultimately where Amari Cooper stepped out at. It was never close to the sidelines. I mean, he had a good 2-3 feet away from the sideline. And what made it worse was that in the replays, you could see the side judge was quite literally right there staring at his feet, and then blows the whistle. They come on, say it was an inverted whistle, and ultimately takes points off the board. Now, obviously in that game, it really didn't end up mattering. Browns won by, three scores in that one. But had that been a close game and that was one of the scores that, was taken off the board for the Browns, I do think, that would be a hotter topic. But for me this week, just more so NFL officiating, but specifically, this ref in this particular game. Got to find a way to be better because that's taking points off the board for teams.
Come on, you got to be kidding me.
Shally.
I would say this, man. I mean, the officiating in all these sports, if you're a young person, you don't know what to do with your life, and you like sports, go try to become an official. You're going to make a lot of money, and if you're good at it, you will get hired, because between the NFL and the MLB, it's appalling at this point. Like, it's awful, like really bad. Mine just a young kid being dumb and probably cost himself, at least his college career for the time being. So I'm going with Alabama State wide receiver Jacob Freeman. If you haven't watched the video yet, kind of came out earlier yesterday. Playing an away game, had a bunch of fans chirping at him. He went to go get in the stands, and the security guard was trying to help him out, pushing him back, not let him get in the stands. Really, honestly, like trying to keep him out of trouble. He then decided that he was mad at the security guard for not letting him go up in the stands in the middle of the game and fight fans, and hit the security guard with a right hook. He's now since been arrested. He's been kicked off the football team. From what I read earlier today, after the criminal thing plays out, they're thinking about expelling him from the school. You just got to be smarter, man. It's just a dumb thing. This kid's probably never getting drafted or anything like that, but it's just another example of just use your head. Like, this guy's literally trying to keep you out of trouble, and then you punch that guy that's trying to keep you out of trouble. And now you're in more trouble. You got arrested. You got kicked off the football team. You might get kicked out of school. It's just crazy. So this week for me, that's what I'm going with.
Come on, you got to be kidding me.
Listen, they've had an already awful season. But my You Got to Be Kidding Me this week is going to add a little bit more salt onto the wound. My You Got to Be Kidding Me this week is the New York Mets. I don't know if you know what this is about. Not big national news. But the Miami Marlins were scheduled to play a game against the New York Mets. They didn't play. It was postponed. Last night, it wasn't raining, and they postponed the game. Why was it postponed, do you ask? Because someone didn't put the tarp on the infield over the weekend, and the field was unplayable. So now the Marlins, who had their best pitcher on their staff scheduled to start Tuesday and could start Sunday on normal rest, has to start game one of the doubleheader today. Will he pitch Sunday if they need him to? It'll have to be on short rest. He's been injury plagued all year, but the Mets issued a formal apology to the Miami Marlins for having to play a doubleheader today, for not putting the tarp on the field. And then it was such a left-handed apology. Steve Cohen gave a real apology, which I respect. But the Mets gave such a left-handed apology, backing up their grounds crew, saying if the tarp is left on the infield too long, it prevents grass from growing. I'm not kidding with you. This is legitimately what happened. The Miami Marlins were forced not to be able to play Tuesday night. when we played Softball America. Like, I'm not trying to, like, these are professional grounds crews. Didn't put a tarp on the field. My mind is blown. I apologize to the Miami Marlins. I'm kind of glad it happened to the Marlins because I don't want to see them in the playoffs. But if I'm being really honest, I feel bad for the organization and the team that wasn't able to play yesterday. So for that, this week, the New York Mets and the grounds crew for not putting the tarp on.
On, you gotta be kidding me.
That is a true you got to be kidding me moment.
That is nuts.
Marlins lost that game this morning too, 11-2.
Oh my God. That makes it even worse.
Insult to injury.
Our sincere apologies to the Marlins and their fans for having to postpone last night's game. We know how important this series is to the Marlins, and every effort was made to get the field playable.
Reds could have pulled in within a half a game, Cottrell. They lost at Washington 4-3.
Damn.
I can't. And the Marlins are tied with the Mets right now, too.
Yep.
They'll probably win the second game of the doubleheader. It baffles my mind how that happens. And then excuse is even worse.
Yeah, that's not the best. Rays and Orioles both won, of course. Blue Jays got shut out by the Yankees.
All right, well, any final thoughts, gentlemen?
I got one. Just wanted to make sure I spoke on it. So earlier today, letter got released about Colin Kaepernick, the letter that he sent out to the Jets GM, and basically just begging him to be on the practice squad, and how it's a low risk, kind of high reward thing. It's like, if you're underwhelmed, then no big deal. At least I went out there, I gave it my all. And then best case scenario, if I'm a great player, then, you guys got essentially a diamond in the rough. Biggest thing for me, Colin Kaepernick, look, I 100% understand you still want to play. 100%, believe that you've been blackballed that you were blackballed from the NFL. Let's stop forgetting that you signed a settlement with the NFL. And, those details never became public. But when they first came out, everyone knew you got a large sum of money, and the agreement essentially was you never play football again. So I just don't understand how we keep finding ourselves back at this point. I get it. You want to play football, but let's also be real here and know everything that happened. Like, you got blackball. That wasn't right. At this point, you've been out of the league for 6 seasons. It's not happening anymore. Like, it's just not going to happen. Give it up. Are you better than Trevor Siemian? Yeah, probably. Are you better than, Nathan Peterman, who's still on the roster? Yeah, you definitely are. But it's not happening. Giving it up. I'm tired of seeing the headlines and everything happening with it. I just wanted to say that, get it out there, because I know it's been the note has been making its way around.
At risk of saying something that I don't want to say, I will keep my mouth shut on this topic, because I have such a strong opinion on this in so many ways, and it's tough to kind of not say. I feel like anybody that knows me knows where my heart is and where I come from, but on a public platform like this, it's tough. You can have your words misconstrued, so I'm going to keep to myself on this one. Any final comments, Shally?
Nothing.
All right, well, that's a fun show. We went 2.5 hours this week. Love talking sports with you, gentlemen. This is and appreciate everybody in the comments, from Jeff to Seigan to Joseph Jeffers to everybody. I mean, there's a million people. Kyle Edwards and Nicholas Reyes and Tiny always checking in. I'm trying to think of a bunch off the top of my head. Alex Elmore, Black Elmore was in there. My man Mo. There's a ton of you guys in the comments tonight. I appreciate you.
Mike Robert Lafferty was in there earlier.
My guy. And if I missed anybody, I apologize. But thank you so much for tuning in to Wire2Wire Sports Podcast, episode 155. And we are signing out.